Hello guys, welcome to Dark Harry. So in this video, we will see what if Harry used Parseltongue to unite every magical creature against the Ministry. If you enjoy these kinds of stories, don't forget to show us some love by hitting the like button and subscribing to the channel. Your support means the world to us. Now, let's start the story. Chapter 1, Whispers in the Dark. Harry Potter woke with a start, sweat beading on his forehead. 3 years after Voldemort's defeat, and nightmares still haunted him. But this one was different. Instead of the usual replay of the Battle of Hogwarts, he dreamt of a vast forest filled with creatures speaking to him in a cacophony of hisses, growls, and chirps, and somehow, he'd understood them all. Reaching for his glasses on the nightstand, Harry glanced at the clock, 3:17 a.m. Beside him, Ginny slept peacefully, her red hair splayed across the pillow. They'd been sharing a flat in London for almost a year now, building a life together after the war. Just a dream, he muttered, sliding out of bed. But something nagged at him. The sensation had felt too real, too familiar, like when he used to speak Parseltongue. In the kitchen, Harry flicked his wand to heat the kettle. He hadn't used Parseltongue since Voldemort's death. The ability had supposedly died with the Dark Lord's soul fragment. At least, that's what they'd all assumed. An owl tapped at the window, startling him. Harry recognized Hermione's tawny owl immediately and let it in. The bird dropped a hastily folded note on the counter. Harry, emergency at the Ministry. Magical Creatures Division in chaos. New regulations passed overnight. Creatures being rounded up. Need your help. Harry crumpled the note. Hermione had been working in the Department for Regulation and Control of Magical Creatures for the past year, fighting for reforms from within the system. If she was sending middle-of-the-night owls, something was seriously wrong. 15 minutes later, Harry apparat to the designated meeting spot, a quiet alley 2 blocks from the Ministry's visitor entrance. Hermione paced nervously, her Ministry robes wrinkled as if she'd been wearing them for days. "You look like hell," Harry said, giving her a quick hug. "Haven't slept in 36 hours. She pushed a stack of parchments into his hands. These were pushed through the Wisengamot yesterday. Emergency session, minimal quorum. Most reformers weren't even notified. Harry skimmed the documents, his frown deepening. Registration of all magical creatures with human-like intelligence. Restricted zones. Tracking charms. He looked up. This is Umbridge-level stuff. Worse, even. It's Nightshade, Hermione said, her voice dropping. Cassius Nightshade. New head of the department, appointed last month. Pure blood, old money, charming in public. He's convinced the minister these measures are temporary security precautions after that centaur incident in Scotland. The one where a centaur herd defended their territory against wizards building holiday homes. That was self-defense. Doesn't matter now. Nightshade's enforcement squads are already out. They started with the Merpeople colonies at Loch Lomond. Hermione's eyes welled with tears. Harry, it was a slaughter. They're calling it a containment operation gone wrong. Why am I just hearing about this now? Harry demanded, anger flaring. Prophet's been bought off. Quibbler's the only one reporting it, but who reads the Quibbler for news? Harry finished, running a hand through his messy hair. What do you need me to do? There's a list. Hermione pulled out another piece of parchment. Creatures scheduled for registration tonight. Including a small community of sentient serpents living in the Forest of Dean. Descendants of Slytherin's familiars, supposedly. Highly magical, highly intelligent. Harry's dream flashed through his mind. You think I can still? I don't know. But we have to try. They're being targeted specifically because they've organized other snake species against Ministry interference. Harry nodded, decision made. Let's go. Wait. Hermione grabbed his arm. Harry, this isn't sanctioned. If we interfere with Ministry operations, then we interfere. Harry's green eyes hardened. I didn't kill Voldemort so the Ministry could become the next oppressor. The Forest of Dean was eerily quiet as Harry and Hermione apparat to its edge. The moon hung low, casting long shadows through the ancient trees. They're about a mile in, Hermione whispered, casting a disillusionment charm over them both. Near the old stone circle. They moved silently through the forest, wands ready. Harry felt a strange tingling at the base of his skull, growing stronger with each step. Do you hear that? He asked, stopping suddenly. Hermione shook her head. What? But Harry wasn't listening anymore. The tingling had become a flood of whispers, hissing voices speaking over each other in alarm. Danger coming. Two legs with wands. Trap set. Young ones hidden. They know the Ministry's coming, Harry said, his eyes wide. I can hear them. Hermione stared at him. You can, but how? You're Parseltongue, I don't know. Harry closed his eyes, concentrating on the voices. Then, experimentally, he focused on responding. We come to warn you. To help. The forest fell silent for a heartbeat. Then a new voice, stronger and clearer, who speaks? Harry Potter, he replied, the familiar sibilant sounds coming naturally. Friend. Movement to their right. A snake emerged from the underbrush, nearly 6 feet long, iridescent scales shifting between emerald and midnight blue. Its eyes gleamed with an intelligence that sent shivers down Harry's spine. The Potter speaks our tongue still, the snake observed, weaving closer. Surprising. We heard the Dark One took this gift when he fell. Harry, what's it saying? Hermione whispered. Harry translated quickly, then turned back to the snake. The gift remains. I've come to warn you. Wizards from the Ministry approach to capture your colony. The snake's tongue flicked out, tasting the air. We know. They set wards against our leaving an hour past. They come with cages and spells to bind our magic. Harry felt a surge of anger. How many in your colony? 23. 7 younglings. Harry turned to Hermione. They've set anti-apparition and containment wards. There are 23 serpents, including 7 young ones. We need to break the wards and get them out. Hermione was already pulling out her wand. I can work on the wards, but it'll take time. And the Ministry squad, a distant crack echoed through the trees. They come, the serpent hissed urgently. Many 2 legs. With cages. Harry made a split-second decision. Hermione, start on the wards. I'll stall them. Before she could argue, he added, trust me. He turned back to the serpent. Take me to where they approach. I will delay them. The snake seemed to consider him for a moment, then nodded its angular head. Follow, Potter speaker. Harry raced through the forest after the serpent, thoughts whirling. The snake moved with incredible speed, gliding over fallen logs and through thick underbrush without a sound. The whispers in Harry's mind grew louder, dozens of serpent voices communicating in a complex network. They reached a clearing where the forest thinned. Harry could see lights in the distance, the bobbing illumination of wand tips approaching. What is your name? Harry asked the serpent beside him. Cesaroth, came the reply. Elder of the Viridian colony. Cesaroth, I need your colony to create a diversion. Spread out, make noise, but stay hidden. Can you do this? The serpent's head swiveled toward him, eyes unblinking. We can. But why should we trust you, Potter speaker? Harry knelt down to look directly at Cesaroth. Because I've spent my life fighting against those who would classify and control beings based on their blood or species. Because I won't stand by while the Ministry becomes what we fought to destroy. After a moment, Cesaroth's head bobbed in what Harry took as agreement. It will be done. But be warned, we will defend our younglings with deadly force if needed. Let's hope it doesn't come to that, Harry replied. The serpent disappeared into the undergrowth. Moments later, Harry heard the commotion begin, rustling leaves, hissing sounds, sudden movements in all directions. The approaching lights faltered, then spread out defensively. Harry disillusioned himself and moved closer, keeping to the shadows. He could make out 5 ministry wizards now, dressed in the dark blue robes of the Magical Creatures Control Division. They moved in a tight formation, wands raised. Spread out, called their leader, a tall wizard with a close-cropped beard. Remember, stunning spells only. Nightshade wants them unharmed. Unharmed my arse, muttered another wizard. Did you see what happened at the Merepeople colony? Bloody massacre, and not on our side. That was different, the leader snapped. Just follow orders. Harry circled behind them, planning his approach. 5 against 1 weren't great odds, but he had surprise on his side. And, apparently, an army of highly intelligent serpents. He silently cast a confundus charm at the wizard furthest from the group, who promptly turned and began walking in the wrong direction, mumbling about needing to check the perimeter. 4 left. The forest erupted with serpent activity. Snakes slithered across the wizard's paths, some dropping from tree branches, others racing between their feet. The ministry team fired stunning spells wildly, hitting nothing. They're all around us, one wizard cried, panic in his voice. Harry took advantage of the chaos, sending a silent incarcerus at another wizard, who fell with a startled cry as magical ropes bound him tightly. 3 left. The leader spun around, sensing the attack. We've got company. Human intervention. Harry dropped his disillusionment charm. No point hiding now. That's right, he said, stepping into the wand light. And you're trespassing. The recognition was immediate. The leader's eyes widened. Potter? What the hell are you doing here? I could ask you the same thing, Harry replied, wand steady. Since when does the ministry cage sentient beings in the middle of the night? These are dangerous creatures, they're peaceful until threatened, Harry countered. Like now. The 2 remaining subordinates looked uncertainly between Harry and their leader. Everyone in the wizarding world knew who Harry Potter was, the boy who lived, the chosen one, the wizard who defeated Voldemort. Going against him wasn't a simple proposition. The leader's face hardened. We have authorization from the head of department. These serpents have been classified as Class XXXX magical creatures requiring containment. On what grounds? That's classified ministry information. Harry took a step forward. I've spent enough time around classified ministry information to know when it's covering up something unethical. One of the subordinates lowered his wand slightly. Sir, maybe we should reconsider. If Potter's involved, Potter has no official standing here, the leader snapped. He's interfering with ministry business. That's a criminal offense. Harry smiled grimly. Wouldn't be the first time. The standoff stretched for several tense seconds. Then Harry felt a subtle vibration in the air. Hermione's work on the wards was progressing. He just needed a bit more time. Look, Harry said, adopting a more conciliatory tone. I understand you're following orders. But these creatures are sentient. They communicate. They have families. Whatever Nightshade told you about them isn't the full story. And you know better, I suppose, the leader scoffed. Actually, yes. Harry focused, allowing the Parseltongue to rise in his throat. Cesaroth, would you join me? The massive serpent slithered into view, causing the ministry wizards to step back in alarm. Cesaroth raised his head to Harry's knee level, tongue flicking out to taste the air. These are the ones who would cage us? Cesaroth asked. Yes, Harry replied. I'm trying to convince them otherwise. The ministry wizards watched the exchange with undisguised shock. The leader's wand hand trembled slightly. You're communicating with it? Him, Harry corrected. His name is Cesaroth. He's an elder of this colony. And yes, we're having a conversation, just as you and I are. Parseltongue is dark magic, one of the subordinates muttered. It's just a language, Harry replied evenly. Like French or Mermish. The darkness comes from how you use it, not the ability itself. The leaders seem to be reassessing the situation. Even if that's true, our orders stand. These creatures, beings, Harry interrupted. Magical beings with human-like intelligence. Which means they have rights under Section 12 of the Magical Beings Protection Act of 1999. Harry had spent enough time with Hermione to pick up a few legal points. The very act you're violating right now. Doubt flickered across the leader's face. Behind Harry, Cesaroth hissed softly. The female friend has broken the binding spells. Our people can leave now. Harry kept his expression neutral, not wanting to reveal this information. Good. Tell them to prepare but wait for my signal. To the Ministry wizards, he said, here's what's going to happen. You're going to leave, report that the serpents weren't here, and recommend a formal review of their classification status. Nobody gets hurt, no paperwork about confronting Harry Potter in the forest. And if we refuse, the leader challenged, though with noticeably less conviction. Harry shrugged. Then I guess the Prophet gets an exclusive tomorrow about how the Ministry's new creature policies mirror Death Eater tactics. Complete with first-hand account from the boy who lived. It was a bluff. Harry hated using his fame this way. But the threat had its intended effect. The leader lowered his wand slightly. This isn't over, Potter. It is for tonight, Harry replied firmly. After a tense moment, the leader nodded to his remaining men. Release Jennings, he ordered, gesturing to their bound colleague. And somebody find Perkins. Harry maintained his position, wand still ready, as the Ministry team collected themselves. The leader shot him a final glare. Nightshade will hear about this. I'm counting on it, Harry said coolly. The Ministry wizards retreated, half dragging their confused colleague who'd been hit with the Confundus charm. Harry waited until they were well out of sight before turning to Cesaroth. They're gone for now, but they'll be back with more wizards. We must leave this place, Cesaroth agreed. But where can we go that the Ministry will not find us? Harry considered the question. I might know somewhere. A place with other magical beings where you could be protected. Hermione emerged from the trees, looking exhausted but triumphant. The wards are down. Did you? She stopped short at the sight of Cesaroth. Oh. Hermione, meet Cesaroth, Harry said. Elder of the Viridian colony. Cesaroth, this is Hermione Granger. The smartest witch I know and a friend to magical beings everywhere. Cesaroth's head bobbed in acknowledgement. Hermione, after a moment of wide-eyed surprise, gave a small, respectful bow. Can you ask if they're all okay? She asked Harry. Harry translated the question. Cesaroth's response came with an edge of worry. All are alive, but the youngest are frightened. And the Ministry wizard's magic has disturbed our home protections. We cannot stay. Harry explained the situation to Hermione, who bit her lip in thought. They could come to Grimmauld Place temporarily, she suggested. It's unplottable, and you're the secret keeper now. I was thinking the same thing. Harry turned back to Cesaroth. We can offer you temporary sanctuary in a hidden house. The Ministry cannot find it. You would be safe there while we find a permanent solution. Cesaroth seemed to consider this. The colony will need time to gather. Some are still hidden deep. And there is the question of how to travel unseen. Harry smiled. That part, at least, I can help with. 2 hours later, Harry found himself leading a procession of 23 magical serpents through the dark streets of London, all hidden under a combination of disillusionment charms and notice-me-not spells. Hermione had gone ahead to prepare Grimmauld Place, while Harry guided the colony through side streets and alleyways. The serpents moved with surprising coordination, the adults shepherding the younglings in a protective formation. Harry felt their constant communication like background music in his mind, a complex network of warnings, encouragements, and observations flowing between them. "The air tastes of metal and smoke," complained one of the older serpents. "Stay close," Cesaroth instructed a wandering youngling. "The stone forest has many dangers." Harry found himself smiling despite the seriousness of the situation. Stone Forest was an apt description for the city from their perspective. They reached Grimmauld Place without incident. Harry checked the street carefully before leading them to number 12, which materialized between 11 and 13 as he focused on its location. "This dwelling has old magic," Cesaroth observed as they approached the front steps. "And many secrets." "You have no idea," Harry replied, opening the door. The interior of Grimmauld Place had been transformed considerably since Harry had taken ownership. Gone were the dark artifacts, mounted house-elf heads, and general gloom. The walls were now painted in warm colors, the floors refinished, and the lighting bright and welcoming. Still, it retained a certain ancient, magical atmosphere that could never be completely erased. Hermione met them in the entrance hall, looking both nervous and excited. "I've cleared the drawing room and library for them. Set up heating charms for proper temperature regulation. Creature's having a fit, though." On cue, the old house elf appeared with a crack, his eyes widening in horror at the sight of so many serpents entering his domain. "Master brings snake beasts into the noble house of Black," he croaked. "What would Mistress say?" "She'd probably love it, given her family's Slytherin connections," Harry pointed out. "Besides, they're guests, Creature. They need our help." Creature muttered darkly but didn't openly object further. Harry had learned that a direct order couched as respectful instruction usually worked best with the old elf. "Could you prepare some fresh water in large basins for our guests? And perhaps some food?" The house elf straightened slightly at being given a proper task. "Creature knows how to serve guests properly, even scaled ones," he said with dignity, then disappeared with another crack. Harry led the serpents into the drawing room, where Hermione had conjured a variety of comfortable resting spots, heated rocks, soft nests of fabric, and a magical terrarium environment in one corner for the younglings. The serpents spread out, exploring their temporary home with cautious curiosity. "Your nest is unusual," Cesaroth commented, surveying the room. "But it has strong protections." "We thank you, Potter Speaker." "You're welcome," Harry replied, then switched to English for Hermione's benefit. "They approve. And they're grateful." Hermione beamed. "I've been reading about magical serpent habitats, but I wasn't sure," a silver terrier Patronus bounded into the room, interrupting her. Ron's voice emerged, "Harry, Hermione, where are you? Ministry's in chaos. Nightshades called emergency session for Aurors. Something about creature rebellion. Need to talk ASAP." The Patronus dissolved, leaving a heavy silence. "That didn't take long," Harry said grimly. Hermione checked her watch. "It's nearly dawn. The Prophet will have the story by breakfast." "What story?" "That I stopped an illegal detention of sentient beings. You know that's not how Nightshade will spin it." Hermione ran a hand through her bushy hair, a nervous habit. "He'll make it sound like you interfered with legitimate ministry security operations. Maybe even that you're rallying dangerous creatures against wizarding authority." Harry paced the room, frustration building. The serpents watched him with unblinking eyes. "Your female friend speaks truth," Cesaroth observed. "The two legs in power will twist this night's events." Harry paused. "You understood her? You understand English?" "We understand much," Cesaroth replied. "Though we cannot speak human tongues. The gift goes only one way, except with speakers like you." This was interesting information that Harry filed away for later. He turned back to Hermione. "We need to get ahead of this. Contact Luna, see if the Quibbler can publish the true story before the Prophet releases whatever propaganda Nightshade feeds them." Hermione nodded. I'll send an owl now. And I should get to the ministry, I'll hear more from the inside. Is that safe? Harry asked, concerned. If they connect you to tonight. I'll say I was working late on house elf legislation. She smiled wryly. No one questions when Hermione Granger stays at the office all night with paperwork. Harry wasn't entirely convinced but knew better than to argue. Be careful. And tell Ron to meet me here as soon as he can get away without raising suspicion. After Hermione left, Harry sat on the floor among the serpents, suddenly exhausted. The adrenaline that had carried him through the night was wearing off, leaving bone-deep fatigue in its wake. You should rest, Potter Speaker, Cesaroth said, coiling nearby. The coming days will require strength. I know, Harry agreed. But first, I need to understand something. How is it that I can still speak with you? My Parseltongue ability was supposed to have died with Voldemort. Cesaroth's head swayed slightly, a gesture Harry was beginning to recognize as contemplation. The Dark One's soul fragment gave you the initial gift, yes. But magic, once learned, leaves its mark. Like a path through a forest, walk it enough times, and the path remains even after the first traveler is gone. But it feels different now. Stronger in some ways. Because it is yours now, not his, Cesaroth explained. And it grows. We have sensed it since you entered our forest. Your magic reaches beyond mere serpents now. Harry frowned. What do you mean? You will see, Cesaroth replied cryptically. When the time comes. Before Harry could press further, Creature appeared with several basins of water and platters of raw meat and eggs. The younglings moved eagerly toward the food, while the adults maintained a dignified patience. Thanks, Creature, Harry said sincerely. The house elf gave a grudging nod. Master should sleep. Creature has prepared the main bedroom. Harry realized he'd been awake for nearly 24 hours now. You're right. Wake me if anyone arrives. As he climbed the stairs to his bedroom, Harry's mind raced despite his exhaustion. What had Cesaroth meant about his magic growing? And how would Nightshade respond to tonight's interference? The Ministry Wizard's parting words echoed in his mind, "This isn't over, Potter." Harry had a sinking feeling that it was just beginning. The headline of the Daily Prophet the next morning read, "Potter interferes with critical Ministry security operation." The accompanying article described Harry as recklessly endangering Ministry personnel while protecting deadly Class XXXX magical creatures from necessary containment measures. Ron tossed the paper onto the kitchen table of Grimmauld Place with disgust. Load of rubbish. They're painting you as some sort of radical creature rights extremist. Harry, who had managed 4 hours of restless sleep before Ron's arrival woke him, sipped his coffee without responding. The kitchen was quiet except for Creature's occasional mutterings as he prepared breakfast, deliberately avoiding the topic of the 23 serpents currently occupying the upper floors. The Auror office is divided, Ron continued, accepting a cup of tea from Creature with a distracted nod of thanks. Half think you've lost the plot, half think the Ministry's overreaching. Robards is trying to stay neutral, but Nightshade's putting pressure on him to issue a statement condemning you. And where do you stand? Harry asked, watching his friend carefully. Ron gave him a look of disbelief. With you, obviously. Always with you. But mate, I'm trying to understand what exactly happened last night. Hermione's note was pretty sparse on details. Harry hesitated, then gestured toward the ceiling. You might want to meet our guests first. Ron's eyes widened. They're here. In the house. Drawing room and library. Ron followed Harry upstairs, his expression a mixture of curiosity and apprehension. When they entered the drawing room, he stopped dead in the doorway. Bloody hell, he whispered. The serpents were arranged in various states of rest around the room. Cesaroth lay coiled on a heated rock near the fireplace, his iridescent scales shimmering in the morning light. The younglings were playing what appeared to be a complex game of tag in the terrarium, their movements quick and precise. "Ron, this is Cesaroth," Harry said, switching to Parseltongue for the introduction. "Cesaroth, my friend Ron Weasley." The great serpent raised his head, regarding Ron with intelligent eyes. "The red-haired one. Your battle companion." Harry smiled at the description. "Yes, exactly." Ron, to his credit, managed a nervous nod of greeting. Does he understand me?" "They understand English, actually," Harry explained. "They just can't speak it." "Right." Ron took a cautious step further into the room. "And you can still do the hissing thing? Even after?" Apparently it wasn't tied to Voldemort's soul fragment after all. Or at least, not entirely. Harry gestured to a chair, and they both sat. "It's complicated. I'm still figuring it out myself." Ron nodded slowly. "Hermione mentioned something about them being especially intelligent snakes. Like, magical sentient ones?" "The Viridian colony," Harry confirmed. "They've lived in that part of the Forest of Dean for centuries. Descendants of familiars belonging to Slytherin's line, according to Hermione's research. And the Ministry wanted to round them up because..." Harry's expression darkened. "Officially? Classification review and mandatory registration. Unofficially? Nightshade seems to have a particular interest in magical creatures with organized communities. Especially ones that resist Ministry control. There's more going on than just creature regulation, isn't there?" Ron said shrewdly. "Much more," Harry agreed. "This is just the beginning." Hermione found evidence of similar operations planned for Centaur territories, merperson colonies, even talks of elvish registration for house elves. Ron let out a low whistle. "Sounds like Umbridge all over again, but with a bigger budget. And institutional support." Harry leaned forward, lowering his voice even though the serpents could understand them anyway. "The question is why now? Why is the Ministry suddenly cracking down on magical beings after years of post-war progress?" "Fear," Ron said simply. "Always comes back to fear, doesn't it? Voldemort's gone, but people still want something to be afraid of, something to control." Harry was impressed, as he often was these days, by Ron's insight. His friend had matured considerably during his aura training. "Speaking of control," Ron continued, "what's your plan here? You can't hide a colony of magical serpents at Grimmauld Place forever." "Working on that part," Harry admitted. "For now, they're safe here. Next step is getting the truth out about what happened last night, then finding allies for whatever comes next." "You've got me and Hermione, obviously," Ron said. "Luna too, I reckon. The Quibbler's already working on a counter-story to the Prophet's rubbish." Harry nodded gratefully. "We'll need more, though. People inside the Ministry, people with connections to other magical beings." "Bill might help," Ron suggested. "He's got contacts among the goblins from his Gringotts work. And Charlie knows all sorts of creature specialists." "Good thinking." Harry felt a familiar surge of energy, the same feeling he'd had during DA meetings, when they were building something important together. "We should make a list of potential allies, people we trust completely." As they began brainstorming names, a silvery otter Patronus swam into the room. Hermione's voice sounded urgent. "Harry, they've issued a summons for you to appear before the Department of Magical Law Enforcement for questioning. Don't respond yet. Coming to you with Kingsley. He wants to help." The Patronus dissolved, leaving Ron and Harry staring at each other. "Kingsley?" Ron said with raised eyebrows. "That's promising." Kingsley Shacklebolt had returned to his aura position after a brief stint as interim minister for magic, declining to run for the permanent position. His support could be invaluable. Before Harry could respond, Cesaroth slithered closer. "The female friend brings another two legs here. Is this wise?" "Kingsley is trustworthy," Harry assured him. He fought with us against Voldemort. Cesaroth's tongue flicked out. Trust is a luxury in dangerous times, Potter speaker. The serpent's words struck Harry as uncomfortably true. They were indeed entering dangerous times, not with the clear-cut evil of Voldemort, but with the murky, institutional oppression of the Ministry itself. In some ways, this would be harder to fight. The flue in the downstairs fireplace activated, announcing Hermione and Kingsley's arrival. Harry exchanged a look with Ron. "Here we go," he said. Kingsley Shacklebolt's deep, measured voice filled the kitchen of Grimmauld Place as he outlined the situation. "Nightshade is pushing for your arrest, Harry. Charges of interfering with Ministry operations, endangering officials, and harboring dangerous creatures. Minister Proudfoot is hesitant to move against you directly, but the pressure is mounting." Harry leaned against the counter, arms crossed. "Let them try. I did nothing wrong." "Legally, that's debatable," Kingsley replied with characteristic frankness. "The new creature regulations give the Ministry broad powers. Morally, however." He shook his head. "These measures go against everything we fought for in the war." Hermione, who'd been furiously taking notes, looked up. "Kingsley, who is Nightshade, really? He appeared out of nowhere 6 months ago and suddenly he's running a major department." "Cassius Nightshade," Kingsley said, his expression grim. "Old pureblood family, but not one that openly supported Voldemort. Educated at Durmstrang, spent most of his career abroad in Eastern Europe. Specializes in magical creature containment and control. His methods were considered too extreme even for the previous Ministry regime, but now." He spread his hands. "Times have changed. The Merepeople attack in Cornwall last year, the Centaur incident in Scotland, people are nervous about non-human magical beings again." "Those were isolated incidents," Harry argued. "And both provoked by wizard encroachment. I know that. You know that. But the public remembers the fear, not the facts." Kingsley's deep eyes showed genuine concern. "Nightshade is exploiting that fear masterfully. He's positioning himself as the protector of wizarding security." Ron, who had been unusually quiet, spoke up. "What's his endgame? Can't just be about controlling a few magical creatures." Kingsley nodded approvingly at the question. "Follow the power. These regulations require extensive new enforcement divisions, expanded Ministry authority, increased funding. And guess who controls it all? Nightshade," Hermione said softly. "He's building his own power base." "Precisely." Kingsley leaned forward. "But there's more. The regulations aren't being applied equally. Certain creatures, particularly those with valuable magical properties, are being registered and then relocated to research facilities." Harry felt a chill. "What kind of research?" "That's where the trail goes dark. But whatever it is, it's well-funded and highly classified." The kitchen fell silent as they absorbed this information. Finally, Harry spoke. "I need to see the serpents upstairs. Then we can discuss what to do next." Kingsley raised an eyebrow but didn't object. The four of them made their way to the drawing room, where the serpent colony had gathered as if expecting them. Cesaroth moved forward as they entered. "The new Two-Legs has a strong magic aura," the serpent observed, studying Kingsley. "Old magic. Deep." Harry translated, and Kingsley looked surprised, then oddly pleased. "Thank you," he said directly to Cesaroth. "That's a kind assessment." Harry switched to Parseltongue. "Cesaroth, we've learned more about the wizard who ordered your capture. His name is Nightshade, and he's taking magical beings for some kind of research." Cesaroth's body went still in a way that Harry was learning signified alarm. "Research? Yes. We have heard whispers of this from other colonies. Serpents taken, never returning. The forest network speaks of pain and extraction." Harry translated this for the others, watching their expressions shift from concern to horror. Extraction? Hermione repeated. Of what? Magic, Cesaroth replied when Harry relayed the question. Our kind possess certain abilities. Venom that can heal or harm. Scales that repel curses. The ability to sense magical disturbances. These gifts are bound to our essence. As Harry translated, Kingsley's face darkened. Magical essence harvesting is strictly regulated. For good reason. Extracting magical properties from sentient beings without consent is classified as dark magic under international wizarding law. Has been since the Grindelwald era, Hermione added. He used similar methods to enhance his followers' abilities. Harry felt sick. So Nightshade isn't just registering magical beings for control, he's harvesting their magical properties. And building political power in the process, Kingsley confirmed. A dangerous combination. We must warn the others, Cesaroth hissed urgently. Many colonies, many kinds of magical beings are at risk. The forest network must spread the word. Harry froze, struck by a sudden realization. The forest network. Cesaroth, you communicate with other magical creatures, not just serpents. All who dwell in wild places have ways of sharing information, Cesaroth replied. Some we understand better than others. The centaur herds. The deeper dwelling serpents. Even the speaking spiders, though they are strange and often hostile. Harry remembered his encounters with Aragog's colony in the Forbidden Forest. Acromantulas, he said to the others. They're part of this communication network too. Ron went slightly pale at the mention of the giant spiders. Brilliant. Just brilliant. Don't you see what this means? Harry said, excitement building. If magical creatures already have their own communication networks, we can use that. Spread warnings about the Ministry's plans. Organize resistance. Harry, Hermione said cautiously, are you suggesting we build some sort of creature rebellion? Not a rebellion, Harry clarified. A coalition. For mutual protection and information sharing. Kingsley looked troubled. That could be seen as directly opposing Ministry authority. It would only reinforce Nightshade's narrative about dangerous creatures and the wizards who support them. So we let him continue unchecked. Harry challenged. Rounding up sentient beings for magical harvesting? No, Kingsley said firmly. We fight this, but strategically. Through proper channels where possible. Expose his methods, challenge the legality of the regulations, build political opposition. While also preparing for direct action where necessary, Harry added, unwilling to rely solely on bureaucratic solutions. Kingsley studied him for a moment, then nodded slowly. You've never been one to trust solely in institutions. Perhaps that's wise, given our history. Harry turned back to Cesaroth. Can you send messages to other magical beings? Tell them what's happening and that there are wizards willing to help. The Great Serpent seemed to consider this. Some, yes. The centaurs would listen, though they are proud and distrustful of wizards. The merfolk in the Great Lake at your learning place might hear through waterways. Others would require direct messengers. We need to coordinate, Harry said to the group after translating. Reach out to every magical being community we can. Warn them about Nightshade's plans and offer sanctuary if needed. That's going to require a network of safe houses, Ron pointed out. Grimmauld Place can't hold everyone. And people we trust to manage them, Hermione added. This is getting big, Harry. Really big. Harry knew they were right. What had started as a rescue mission was rapidly evolving into something much larger, a coordinated resistance against Ministry oppression. He thought of the young serpents playing in the terrarium, of Forenza and the centaur herd, of Dobby who had died free. They deserved better than to become research subjects for a power-hungry bureaucrat. I know it's big, Harry said finally. But if we don't stand against this now, where does it end? First magical creatures, then what? Muggleborns with unusual magical abilities? Anyone deemed different or potentially dangerous? The room fell silent. They had all lived through one such regime already. None wanted to see it rise again in a new form. "I'm with you," Ron said firmly. "Me too," Hermione agreed, reaching for Harry's hand. "Always." Kingsley's deep voice completed the circle. "I'll do what I can from inside the system. Gather information, slow Nightshade's momentum, find allies." Harry felt a surge of gratitude for these people, his closest friends and allies, willing to risk everything again for what was right. And somehow, he knew this was just the beginning of a new chapter in their lives. "You have loyal nestmates, Potter Speaker," Cesaroth observed. "This gives you strength." "It always has," Harry agreed, looking around at the three humans and the colony of serpents, an unlikely alliance, but perhaps exactly what was needed in these uncertain times. The flue activated again downstairs, and Creature's croaky voice called up, "Master Harry. The Lovegood girl is here with her paper father. They bring news." Harry exchanged glances with the others. "Luna and Xenophilius. The Quibbler must be ready to print." "Let's go see what they've got," Ron said, already heading for the stairs. As they left the room, Harry felt Cesaroth's voice in his mind once more. "It begins, Potter Speaker. The gathering of allies. The building of resistance. Remember that in the wild, survival depends not on the strongest creature, but on the strongest connections between creatures." Harry paused at the doorway, looking back at the serpent. "I'll remember." And with that promise, he descended to meet Luna, taking the first step on what he knew would be a long and difficult path. But this time, they wouldn't be fighting alone. This time, they would have allies of every species, a united front against those who would divide and conquer the magical world. Luna Lovegood hadn't changed much since Hogwarts. She still wore her wand tucked behind her ear, radish earrings dangling, her protuberant eyes giving her a permanently surprised look. But there was a new confidence in her bearing, a result of the Quibbler's growing reputation for honest journalism in the post-war years. "Harry Potter," she said dreamily, hugging him as he entered the kitchen. "Dad and I came as soon as we could. We've brought the prototype edition." Xenophilius Lovegood, looking slightly less eccentric than Harry remembered, nodded enthusiastically. "Hot off the press, as they say. Emergency edition." He spread a newspaper on the kitchen table. The headline read in bold letters, "Ministry Creature Crackdown, Harvesting Magic from Sentient Beings." Beneath it was a surprisingly accurate illustration of the serpent colony in the Forest of Dean, with Ministry wizards approaching with cages and wands drawn. "This is actually really good," Hermione said, scanning the article. "Factual, detailed. How did you get all this information?" "I have sources in the Department for Regulation and Control of Magical Creatures," Luna said matter-of-factly. "People who've been concerned about Nightshade's methods for months. Your intervention last night gave them the courage to speak out." "Anonymous sources, of course," Xenophilius added. "Safety first in these troubling times." Harry read portions of the article with growing approval. The Quibbler had outlined the legal issues with the new regulations, quoted international magical being protection statutes, and included testimony from unnamed Ministry insiders about the research facilities where captured creatures were being taken. "This will certainly get attention," Kingsley observed. "Though it may also accelerate Nightshade's plans if he feels exposed." "That's why we're distributing it immediately," Xenophilius said proudly. 10,000 copies going out this morning across Britain. Special international edition to follow by tomorrow." Luna turned to Harry with her characteristic directness. "Is it true you can still speak Parseltongue? And that it's somehow evolved?" Harry shouldn't have been surprised by her insight. Luna had always seen things others missed. "Yes," he admitted. "Though I'm still figuring out exactly what that means." "Fascinating," she said, her eyes widening further. Dad and I have been researching connections between various magical communication systems. Did you know that Parseltongue shares linguistic roots with Mermish? And possibly with the hoof patterns centaurs use for their written language? Hermione looked skeptical, but Harry was intrigued. Really? I've never heard that before. Most haven't, Luna said. The Ministry's Department of Mysteries has suppressed research into cross-species magical communication for centuries. They call it primitive magic officially, but really they're afraid of what might happen if magical beings could all understand each other. Strength in unity, Xenophilius added, tapping his nose knowingly. Ron looked between the love goods with a bemused expression. Right. So, what's our next move after the Quibbler hits the streets? Because the Ministry's going to come down hard, especially on Harry. I've been thinking about that, Harry said. We need to make this bigger than just me. If it's Harry Potter versus the Ministry again, it becomes a personality conflict that Nightshade can spin. But if we can show this is about fundamental rights for all magical beings. A broader coalition, Hermione nodded. Not just us protecting creatures, but creatures and wizards standing together as equals. Exactly, Harry agreed. And I think I know where to start. He turned to Kingsley. We need to get to Hogwarts. Specifically, to the Forbidden Forest. Kingsley raised an eyebrow. The centaur heard. And more, Harry said. If Cesaroth is right about this forest network, the Forbidden Forest could be a central hub. It's home to centaurs, acromantulas, unicorns, thestrals. And it's protected ground, Hermione added, catching on. Ministry enforcement has limited jurisdiction at Hogwarts, especially in the forest. McGonagall would have to agree, Ron pointed out. As headmistress, she'd be taking a huge risk. She fought Voldemort, Harry said simply. She won't stand for this either. Luna was nodding enthusiastically. The Forbidden Forest is perfect. It's always been a sanctuary for creatures the Ministry doesn't understand. Did you know it has one of the highest concentrations of magical convergence points in Britain? That's settled then, Harry said, feeling a plan coalescing. Luna and Xenophilius release the Quibbler story. Kingsley works from inside the Ministry to slow Nightshade's progress and gather intelligence. Hermione researches the legal angles we can use to challenge the regulations. Ron coordinates with his family to expand our network of allies. And you? Hermione asked. Harry smiled grimly. I'm going to Hogwarts to talk to some old friends in the forest. Starting with Firenze. The kitchen buzzed with renewed energy as they began planning the details. Harry stepped aside briefly to send a Patronus message to Headmistress McGonagall, requesting an urgent meeting. As his silver stag bounded away, he felt a familiar sensation at the base of his skull, the serpentine whispers that had become a constant background presence since the previous night. But this time, something was different. Among the hisses, he caught what sounded like a deeper rumble, almost like hoofbeats. And beneath that, a high-pitched clicking that reminded him uncomfortably of acromantulas. Harry gripped the edge of the counter, suddenly dizzy. Was he imagining it, or were other creature voices beginning to filter through his consciousness? Cesaroth's words came back to him, your magic reaches beyond mere serpents now. Harry. Hermione had noticed his discomfort. Are you all right? He straightened, shaking off the momentary disorientation. Fine. Just tired. But as he rejoined the planning session, Harry couldn't shake the feeling that something fundamental was changing within him. His Parseltongue ability wasn't just persisting, it was evolving, expanding. And he wasn't sure if that was something to fear or embrace. Either way, he knew that the path ahead would require every advantage they could muster. The wizarding world was once again at a crossroads, and once again, Harry Potter found himself at the center of the coming storm. Chapter 2, Speaking in Tongues. Harry stepped through the wrought iron gates of Hogwarts, the familiar sight of the castle sending a wave of nostalgia washing over him. 5 years since he'd graduated, but the place still felt like home. The autumn air carried a crisp chill as leaves crunched under his feet along the path to the castle. Bit strange coming back when you're not in trouble, isn't it? Ron joked, walking beside him. Who says I'm not in trouble? Harry replied with a wry smile. Daily Prophet's calling me Potter the Creature Conspirator now. Hermione huffed. That headline was particularly ridiculous. Though not as bad as The Boy Who Lives with Snakes. They'd decided to approach McGonagall together, safety in numbers, just like old times. The Quibbler had published its exposé 3 days ago, and the reaction had been immediate. The wizarding community was divided, many expressing shock at the Ministry's methods, others doubling down on fears about dangerous magical creatures. Meanwhile, Nightshade had escalated his rhetoric, publicly declaring Harry a person of interest in an ongoing investigation. The great oak doors of the entrance hall swung open as they approached. Professor McGonagall stood waiting, her tall figure as stern and commanding as ever, though her hair had gone completely silver. Potter, Weasley, Granger, she greeted them with a nod. Punctual for once. The world truly is changing. Despite her dry tone, Harry caught the hint of warmth in her eyes. McGonagall had been one of the first to respond to his Patronus message, agreeing to meet immediately. Thank you for seeing us, Professor, Harry said. Minerva, please. You're no longer my students. She gestured them inside. Though you still managed to find trouble with remarkable consistency. They followed her through familiar corridors, students stopping to stare and whisper as they passed. Harry heard his name repeated several times, along with serpents and ministry. News traveled fast, especially at Hogwarts. McGonagall led them not to the headmistress's office but to her old Transfiguration classroom, which she apparently still used for private meetings. Once inside, she sealed the door with several privacy charms before turning to face them. Now then, she said, explain to me exactly why I should allow you to turn the Forbidden Forest into a headquarters for what the Ministry is already calling a creature insurrection. Harry hadn't expected anything less than directness from McGonagall. Because what the Ministry is doing is wrong. They're rounding up sentient magical beings for experimentation. Harvesting their magical properties. So Mr. Lovegood's article claims, McGonagall replied, though her expression suggested she already believed it. Do you have proof? Hermione placed a folder on the desk. Testimonies from 3 Ministry employees who witnessed creatures being transported to unmarked facilities. Records of budgetary allocations for magical essence research that didn't exist 6 months ago. And a list of magical species targeted, all with unique magical properties that could be weaponized or commercialized. McGonagall examined the documents, her lips pressing into an increasingly thin line. This is disturbing, certainly. But why involve Hogwarts? Surely there are other places for your coalition. The Forbidden Forest is unique, Harry explained. It's home to multiple magical species with their own communication networks. It's protected territory with limited Ministry jurisdiction. And it has a history of providing sanctuary. It's also full of children's classes several times a week, McGonagall countered. I cannot and will not endanger my students. We don't want to endanger anyone, Harry said earnestly. But the forest creatures are already at risk. The centaurs, the unicorns, the thestrals, they're all on Nightshade's target list. We're not bringing danger to Hogwarts, we're trying to prevent it from reaching here. McGonagall's gaze sharpened. And how exactly do you plan to communicate with these creatures? Hagrid isn't even at the castle currently, he's in France visiting Madame Maxime. Harry hesitated, then decided on complete honesty. I can speak to them. At least, I'm starting to. Parseltongue was one thing, Potter, but centaurs speak English perfectly well, if reluctantly to humans. It's more than that. Harry struggled to explain something he barely understood himself. My ability is changing. Evolving. I can understand more than just snakes now. It's like translating feelings, intentions, even from creatures that don't technically speak. McGonagall studied him with the intensity he remembered from Transfiguration exams. That would be an extraordinarily rare magical development. Almost unheard of, in fact. He's telling the truth, Ron vouched. I've seen it. Started with the serpents, but when we visited Charlie last week at the Dragon Sanctuary in Romania, Harry could sense what the Chinese fireball was feeling. Knew it was in pain before any of the handlers noticed the thorn in its foot. McGonagall sat down at her desk, looking thoughtful. There are ancient texts that speak of such abilities. Wizards who could bridge the communication gap between magical species. They were called many things throughout history: beast speakers, creature tongues, wild mages. They were exceedingly rare and often misunderstood. Persecuted, you mean, Hermione said quietly. Indeed, Miss Granger. Their abilities threaten the hierarchical structure wizards have long maintained over magical creatures. McGonagall fixed Harry with a penetrating look. Which is precisely why Nightshade would consider you particularly dangerous now. Harry absorbed this information. It explained the Ministry's aggressive response to his relatively minor interference in the Forest of Dean. It wasn't just about the serpents, it was about what his evolving abilities represented. Professor Minerva, he corrected himself, we need to make contact with the centaurs. They're a keystone species in the forest's magical ecosystem. If they agree to help, others will follow. McGonagall was silent for a long moment. Finally, she stood. Very well. I will allow you to enter the forest and attempt to speak with Firenze and his herd. But under conditions. Name them, Harry said immediately. First, no students can be involved. Second, you establish clear boundaries, the coalition stays in the deeper parts of the forest, away from teaching areas. Third, I am kept informed of all activities. And fourth. Her expression softened slightly, you promise to be careful, Potter. All of you. Harry felt a rush of gratitude. Thank you. Don't thank me yet. The centaurs may not be as receptive as you hope. They have long memories and complex politics of their own. McGonagall moved toward the door. I'll escort you to the forest edge. After that, you're on your own. As they followed her back through the castle, Ron leaned close to Harry. You realize we're 18 again, right? Following McGonagall into danger, breaking rules for the greater good. Except we're not students anymore, Hermione reminded him. We're adults starting a political movement that could reshape magical society. So basically the same, but with more paperwork, Ron quipped. Despite the seriousness of their mission, Harry found himself smiling. Some things never changed. The edge of the Forbidden Forest looked exactly as Harry remembered, dense, dark, and forbidding. McGonagall left them there with a final warning to send a Patronus if they got into trouble. Like old times, Ron muttered, eyeing the twisted trees uneasily. Minus the detention. The centaurs usually patrol the eastern sector this time of year, Hermione said, consulting a small notebook. During the waxing moon, they follow the constellation Sagittarius. Harry raised an eyebrow. Been studying centaur movements, have you? Someone had to, she replied primly. You were busy with the serpents, and Ron was creating the safe house network. They moved deeper into the forest, following a barely visible path. The canopy grew thicker overhead, filtering the daylight into dappled patterns on the forest floor. Harry felt a familiar tingling at the base of his skull, similar to what he experienced with the serpents, but different in texture somehow. Do you feel that? He asked, stopping suddenly. Ron and Hermione halted beside him. Feel what? Ron asked. They're watching us. Harry turned slowly, scanning the trees. Multiple species. Not just centaurs. Hermione looked alarmed. How can you tell? I don't know. I just can. Harry closed his eyes, concentrating on the sensations washing over him. Thestrals to the north. Something small and buzzing. Pixies maybe, in the trees above us. And centaurs. He pointed east. That way. Moving parallel to us. Ron gripped his wand tighter. That's bloody unsettling, mate. Actually, it's fascinating, Hermione countered. If Harry can sense magical creatures without seeing them, that's an entirely different aspect of his ability. Harry opened his eyes, feeling strangely energized. Let's keep going. But be respectful. We're in their territory now. They continued eastward, Harry increasingly aware of the forest's inhabitants observing their progress. The sensation wasn't threatening, more curious, cautious. After 20 minutes of hiking, they reached a small clearing. We should wait here, Harry said. They're circling us. Almost as he finished speaking, a centaur stepped into the clearing, powerful equine body, proud human torso, stern face framed by dark hair and beard. Harry recognized him immediately. Bane. The centaur's expression was unreadable. Harry Potter. You trespass in our territory. Again. We come seeking an audience with your herd, Harry said formally. On a matter concerning the safety of all forest dwellers. Bane stomped a hoof impatiently. Human problems do not concern us. These aren't just human problems, Hermione interjected. The Ministry is targeting centaurs specifically for registration and possible relocation. We are aware of the wizard's new laws, Bane replied coldly. We have faced such threats before. We will handle them as we always have, by defending our territory. Harry felt frustration building. This was going exactly as he'd feared. Centaurs were notoriously isolationist and proud. Then he felt something, a subtle shift in the tingling at his skull. Without consciously deciding to, he took a step forward and spoke. The stars show a convergence of paths. Ancient enemies must find common ground when the shadow falls across all lands equally. The words weren't his own, exactly. They came through him, shaped by his voice but formulated in the rhythmic, portentous style of centaur speech. Bane's eyes widened in genuine shock. How dare you mimic our sacred forms, he demanded, though Harry detected uncertainty beneath his anger. I don't mimic, Harry replied, still in that strange, formal cadence. I translate what lies between us. The language of shared fate. 2 more centaurs emerged from the trees, a dappled gray male and a chestnut female, both carrying bows. What trickery is this? The female demanded. Bane raised a hand for silence, studying Harry intently. It is not trickery, Cloudmane. It is, something else. He took a step closer to Harry. You speak in the pattern of stars, human. How is this possible? Harry struggled to explain something he didn't fully understand himself. My magic is changing. I can hear the voices of magical beings, translate between species. A wild speaker, the gray centaur murmured. Not seen for many centuries. Ronan, you cannot believe, Bane began, but was interrupted by a new arrival. The stars foretold this meeting, came a calm voice. Firenze stepped into the clearing, his palomino body gleaming in the dappled light. Unlike the other centaurs, his expression was welcoming. Firenze, Harry greeted him with relief. The centaur had been a professor at Hogwarts briefly and had always been more sympathetic to humans. Harry Potter. Firenze inclined his head. And Ron Weasley and Hermione Granger. The forest has been speaking of your arrival for days. You knew we were coming? Ron asked. The movement of stars and planets reveals much to those who know how to read them. Firenze approached Harry, his blue eyes intense. But they did not show that you would come bearing the old magic of translation. Bane snorted. This could be a wizard trick, Firenze. You are too quick to trust humans. Is it a trick when the forest itself acknowledges him? Firenze countered. Have you not felt the shift in the magical currents since he entered our territory? The Thestrals gather to the north. The Botruckles watch from the oaks. Even the Acromantulas stir in their hollow. Harry felt a surge of validation. So he wasn't imagining the connections forming around him. "We've come to warn you," he said, returning to his normal speech pattern. "The Ministry's creature regulations aren't just about registration. They're targeting magical beings with unique properties for experimentation. Harvesting magical essence." Firenze nodded grimly. "We have heard rumors of such atrocities. 3 centaurs from the Scottish Highlands herd disappeared last month. Taken for research," Hermione confirmed. "Along with mere people from Loch Lomond and a colony of magical serpents that Harry managed to rescue." "And what do you propose, Harry Potter?" Bane asked, still suspicious but now listening intently. "That we flee. Centaurs do not abandon their territory." "Not flee," Harry said. "Unite. Form a coalition of magical beings for mutual protection and information sharing. The Forbidden Forest could be a sanctuary and a headquarters. You ask us to ally with other creatures?" Bane looked incredulous. "With acromantulas who would devour our foals? With unicorns who trample our sacred groves? With humans who have restricted our lands for centuries?" "Yes," Harry said simply. "Because separately, we can all be picked off one by one. Together, we have a chance." A heavy silence fell over the clearing. The centaurs exchanged looks, communicating in subtle gestures and expressions. Finally, Firenze spoke. "We must consult with the herd elders. This decision cannot be made by the 4 of us alone." "We understand," Hermione said. "How long?" A sudden, sharp sensation cut through Harry's mind like a knife, urgent, alarmed. Without thinking, he shouted, "Everyone down!" A heartbeat later, something massive crashed through the trees at the edge of the clearing. Harry caught a glimpse of 8 hairy legs, gleaming pincers, and multiple eyes before chaos erupted. "Acromantula!" Ron yelled, raising his wand. "Stupefy!" The spell hit the giant spider but merely slowed it momentarily. The centaurs had scattered, reaching for their bows. Hermione cast a shield charm as a second acromantula appeared from a different direction. "Wait!" Harry shouted. The buzzing in his mind was intensifying, becoming almost coherent. "They're not attacking. They're fleeing." As if to confirm his words, 3 more acromantulas burst into the clearing, moving with the frantic energy of panic rather than aggression. Behind them came the sounds of crashing vegetation and human shouts. "Ministry!" Hermione realized aloud. "They're raiding the acromantula colony." Harry concentrated on the chaotic impressions flooding his mind from the giant spiders. Fear. Danger. Capture. Webs burning. Young ones taken. "They're rounded up the smaller acromantulas," he reported grimly. "The adults are escaping, but the Ministry has their young." Bane looked torn between flight and fight. "This is not our concern," he began, but Firenze cut him off. "It is exactly our concern," the Palomino centaur insisted. "Today the spiders, tomorrow us. The stars have aligned precisely as Harry Potter warned." The sounds of pursuit were growing closer. Harry made a quick decision. "Ron, Hermione, help the acromantulas get deeper into the forest. I'll try to slow down the Ministry team." "Alone? Are you mental?" Ron protested. "Not alone," Firenze said unexpectedly. He knocked an arrow to his bow. "I will accompany Harry Potter." "As will I," said Cloudmane, the female centaur, stepping forward with her own bow ready. "The time for isolation has passed." Bane looked outraged but, surprisingly, didn't object. Instead, he turned to Ronan. "Guide the humans and the spiders to the stone circle. It has protections." Harry felt a surge of hope. The coalition was forming already, born of immediate necessity rather than lengthy negotiation. He nodded to Forenza and Cloudmane. Let's go. They moved swiftly through the trees, circling toward the sounds of the Ministry raid. Harry's new senses guided him, alerting him to the positions of both the fleeing acromantulas and the pursuing wizards. They reached the edge of a sloping area where the forest thinned. Below, Harry could see at least a dozen Ministry personnel in the dark blue robes of magical creatures' control. They had created a perimeter of magical fire around part of the massive acromantula web structure. Inside floating, translucent containment spheres were what looked like younger spiders, car-sized rather than elephant-sized. Those cages are designed for transport, Cloudmane whispered. They will take the younglings away. Harry felt sick watching the operation. The Ministry team moved with practiced efficiency, stunning any adult acromantulas that approached while carefully securing the younger ones. We need to disrupt the perimeter, Harry whispered. Give more of them a chance to escape. But we're outnumbered. Forenza's blue eyes gleamed. Numbers are not everything, Harry Potter. He gestured to the forest around them. We have allies you cannot see. Harry concentrated, extending his awareness into the surrounding trees. Forenza was right. The forest itself seemed to pulse with angry energy. Small creatures watched from hiding places, bowtruckles in the trees, gnomes in the underbrush, pixies flitting nervously between branches. And they were all focused on the Ministry intruders. Can you help me reach them? Harry asked Forenza. Coordinate them. The centaur placed a hand on Harry's shoulder. Focus your gift. Feel the forest's pulse. I will guide you. Harry closed his eyes, leaning into the strange sensations that had been building since he entered the forest. With Forenza's steady presence anchoring him, he let his consciousness expand outward, touching the minds of the watching creatures. It wasn't language as he understood it with the serpents. With these diverse beings, it was more like impressions, emotions, intentions, a primal form of communication that transcended words. Harry focused on projecting a simple message: the Ministry threatens all. Help us create confusion. Free the captured young ones. He felt responses filtering back: curiosity, agreement, readiness. Opening his eyes, Harry nodded to Forenza and Cloudmane. They'll help. On my signal, target the containment spheres. The forest creatures will create diversions. The centaurs knocked their arrows, aiming carefully down the slope. Harry raised his wand, took a deep breath, and sent out a wordless pulse of magic, the signal. The forest erupted into coordinated chaos. Bowtruckles dropped from the trees onto the Ministry wizards, their sharp twig-like fingers jabbing at eyes and faces. Pixies swarmed in blue clouds, pulling at robes and hair. Gnomes burst from the undergrowth, biting ankles and tripping the startled humans. In the confusion, Harry, Forenza, and Cloudmane launched their attack. The centaur's arrows flew with unerring accuracy, striking the magical containment spheres at their weakest points. Harry cast a powerful reducto at the main control matrix generating the spheres, shattering it in a shower of magical sparks. The perimeter, a Ministry wizard shouted. Someone's broken the perimeter. The containment spheres began to fail, releasing the young acromantulas, which immediately scuttled toward the deeper forest. Adult acromantulas seized the opportunity, rushing in to protect their offspring's escape. Second wave, Harry called to his allies. Forenza and Cloudmane fired another volley of arrows while Harry cast a series of shield charms to protect the escaping spiders. A voice cut through the chaos, loud, commanding, and chillingly familiar to Harry. Sector 3, deploy the essence extractors. If we can't contain them, we'll harvest on sight. Harry scanned the scene and spotted him, a tall wizard with silver-streaked black hair and a close-cropped beard, directing the operation with cold efficiency. Cassius Nightshade himself had come to oversee this raid. That's him, Harry told the centaurs. The head of the department. Forenza's expression darkened. He carries old magic. Dark magic. I can smell it from here. Several ministry wizards had deployed strange, silver devices that emitted a pulsing blue light. When the light touched an acromantula, the creature froze in apparent agony while a glowing essence began to extract from its body. "They're killing them," Harry realized in horror. "Draining their magic." Without hesitation, he stood and aimed his wand directly at Nightshade. Expelliarmus. The spell shot down the slope, but Nightshade sensed it coming and deflected it with remarkable speed. His head snapped up, eyes locking with Harry's across the distance. "Potter!" he snarled, his voice carrying clearly. "I should have known you'd be interfering again." "This ends now, Nightshade," Harry shouted back. "What you're doing is illegal under international magical law." Nightshade's laugh was cold. "Laws change, Potter. The future belongs to those who harness power efficiently. These creatures are walking reservoirs of magical essence going to waste." He gestured sharply, and several ministry wizards turned their attention to Harry and the centaurs. Spells began to fly up the slope. "We're exposed," Cloudmane warned, ducking behind a tree as a stunning spell whizzed past. Harry knew she was right. They'd achieved their primary goal, many of the acromantulas had escaped, but now they were in danger of being captured themselves. A piercing whistle cut through the air. Harry turned to see Bane standing further up the hillside with several more centaurs. The proud centaur had apparently decided to join the fight after all. "Retreat to the stone circle," Bane commanded. "The forest will cover you." As if on cue, the trees around them seemed to groan and shift. Branches lowered, underbrush thickened, creating a natural barrier between them and the ministry forces. Harry recognized powerful old magic at work, not from any individual creature but from the forest itself, responding to the collective will of its inhabitants. They used the cover to make their escape, running deeper into the forest as the sounds of frustrated shouts faded behind them. Harry felt exhilarated despite the danger. What they'd just witnessed was unprecedented, different magical species spontaneously coordinating through his emerging ability. "That was brilliant," he told Forenza as they ran. "The forest actually responded." "The forest has always responded to those who know how to ask," Forenza replied. "You are learning to ask, Harry Potter. That is the gift of a wild speaker." They reached the stone circle, a ring of ancient, moss-covered megaliths in a perfectly circular clearing. Ron and Hermione were already there, along with the escaped acromantulas and a growing assembly of forest creatures. Harry spotted thestrals watching from the trees, unicorns keeping a cautious distance, and what appeared to be a delegation of mere people who had somehow traveled from the Black Lake through underground waterways. "Harry!" Hermione rushed forward. "What happened?" "We felt the forest shifting, and then all these creatures started arriving." "Nightshade was there personally," Harry explained quickly. "They were using devices to extract magical essence on site. We managed to free most of the younger acromantulas, but they took some of our younglings," came a clicking, whispering voice. Harry turned to see a massive acromantula approaching, larger than any he'd seen since Aragog. Its 8 eyes fixed on Harry with disturbing intelligence. "You are Aragog's descendant?" Harry asked, recognizing the patriarchal authority the huge spider projected. "I am Arachneir, son of Mozag, mate of Aragog," the spider confirmed. "You are the Potter, friend of the half-giant?" "Hagrid, yes." Harry nodded. "I'm sorry we couldn't save all your young." "You saved many," Arachneir acknowledged. "The colony remembers its debts." Bane stepped forward, looking uncomfortable in the presence of the giant spider but maintaining his dignity. The stars aligned as foretold. The forest creatures stand together against a common threat. Harry looked around the stone circle in amazement. Historic enemies, centaurs and acromantulas, thestrals and unicorns, all gathered in uneasy alliance. The mere people had sent representatives despite the difficulty of travel. Even the smaller beings, botruckles, pixies, gnomes, clustered around the edges, part of this unprecedented gathering. "This is incredible," Hermione whispered beside him. "Harry, do you realize what you've done? Some of these species haven't cooperated since before the Founder's time." Before Harry could respond, Firenze raised his voice to address the assembly. "The Ministry of Magic threatens all who dwell in the forest. Today they came for the Acromantulas. Tomorrow, perhaps the centaurs or the unicorns. Each alone cannot stand against their numbers and their technology. Together, we have a chance." "And what does the Potter propose?" Arachneer clicked. All eyes turned to Harry. He felt the weight of their expectations, their fear, their hope. This wasn't like leading Dumbledore's army, these were ancient magical species with their own cultures, histories, and grudges. "I propose a pact," he said, his voice carrying across the clearing. "A coalition of all magical beings for mutual protection and information sharing. The forest becomes our sanctuary, and in return, we defend it together against those who would harm any of us." "Pretty words," hissed a merperson in the guttural above-water speech of their kind. "But how does this work in practice? We cannot leave our waters for long." Harry nodded, acknowledging the practical concern. "We establish a communication network. When one group is threatened, all respond according to their abilities. Mere people watch the waterways. Centaurs patrol the lands. Acromantulas monitor the hidden places. Smaller creatures serve as messengers." "And the wizards?" Bane asked pointedly. "What is their role in this coalition?" "We provide magical support," Hermione answered. "Counterspells against Ministry containment magic. Safe houses for those who must leave their territories. And political advocacy in the human world." "The Potter speaks our language," Arachneer observed. "Not with words, but with understanding. This is old magic returning." Harry felt something strange happening as the creatures discussed his proposal. The buzzing in his mind was intensifying, but instead of becoming painful, it was resolving into clearer impressions. He could sense the suspicion from the centaurs, the calculating consideration from the Acromantulas, the ancient wisdom of the unicorns, the practical concerns of the mere people. Not just emotions, but complex thoughts. "I can understand you," he said suddenly. "All of you. Not just words, but meanings. Intentions." The gathering fell silent. Firenze stepped forward, his expression solemn. "The gift grows stronger. As was written in the stars." "What does this mean?" Ron asked, looking between Harry and the assembled creatures. "It means," Bane said slowly, "that for the first time in centuries, the magical beings have a true translator. One who can bridge the gaps between our kinds. A wild speaker comes in times of great change," Firenze added. "When the old order must give way to a new one." The implications were overwhelming. Harry had never asked for this role, just as he'd never asked to be the chosen one. But as before, he recognized the responsibility that came with it. "I will serve as translator," he said formally. "But this coalition must belong to all of us equally. Each species must have a voice." "A council," Hermione suggested. "With representatives from each group." The idea sparked discussion throughout the gathering. Harry could feel the swirl of reactions, approval, skepticism, hope, fear. But overall, a growing consensus. One by one, the representatives stepped forward to signal their agreement, Bane for the centaurs, though clearly still harboring reservations, Arachneer for the Acromantulas, a silver-maned unicorn who communicated through magical impression rather than words, the lead merperson with their webbed hand raised, and others from the smaller species. "Then it is decided," Firenze announced. "The Forest Coalition is formed. May the stars guide our path." A strange, solemn energy pulsed through the stone circle, ancient magic responding to their pact. Harry felt it wash over him, binding them all in ways he didn't fully understand but somehow knew were significant. The gathering began to disperse, each species returning to their territories but leaving representatives behind for continued planning. Ron pulled Harry and Hermione aside. "That was bloody amazing," he said in a low voice. "But you realize we've just helped form what the Ministry will absolutely call a creature army, right? They're going to lose their minds." "It's not an army," Hermione insisted. "It's a mutual protection pact. With centaurs who are expert archers and giant spiders with poisonous fangs," Ron pointed out. "Doesn't matter what we call it, Nightshade will use this to justify even harsher measures." Harry knew Ron was right. "Then we need to be prepared. Nightshade saw me today. He knows I'm involved." "We should contact Kingsley," Hermione said. "And McGonagall. They need to know what happened. And I need to check on Grimmauld Place," Harry added. "Make sure the Serpent Colony is still secure." As they made plans, Firenze approached them. "Harry Potter, a word before you depart." Harry stepped aside with the centaur. "What is it?" "What happened today is only the beginning," Firenze said gravely. "The Ministry will retaliate. And not all creatures will remain loyal to the Coalition. Ancient grudges run deep." "I know," Harry acknowledged. "We'll need to build trust over time. There is something else." Firenze looked up at the patches of sky visible through the forest canopy. "The stars speak of a traitor. One close to your circle who will betray the Coalition to its enemies." Harry felt a chill. "Do the stars say who?" "No. Only that their motivation will be fear rather than malice." Firenze placed a hand on Harry's shoulder. "Trust your gift, Harry Potter. It will reveal truths that eyes cannot see." With that cryptic warning, the centaur rejoined his herd, leaving Harry troubled. A traitor among them? After everything they'd witnessed today, it was hard to imagine any of the creatures turning against the Coalition. And his closest friends would never betray him, would they? Pushing the disturbing thought aside, Harry rejoined Ron and Hermione. They had work to do. 2 weeks later, Harry stood in the kitchen of Grimmauld Place, scanning the latest edition of the Daily Prophet. The headline screamed, "Potter's Creature Army Threatens Wizarding Security." "They're really running with the army angle," he muttered, tossing the paper aside. "Public opinion is split," Hermione reported, reviewing notes from her Ministry sources. "The Quibbler's coverage of the essence extraction has shocked a lot of people. But Nightshade has powerful allies in the Wizengamot. They've authorized expanded funding for his department and classified the Forest Coalition as a magical security threat." "At least the Safe House network is working," Ron said. He'd spent the past fortnight establishing a system of protected locations across Britain where threatened magical beings could find temporary sanctuary. "We've relocated 3 merperson families from the Welsh coast, a centaur herd from the Scottish Highlands, and a dozen house elves who escaped Ministry registration." The kitchen was crowded. Luna sat at the table, drafting another Quibbler article. Neville Longbottom had arrived yesterday, offering his expertise in herbology to help create camouflage for the safe houses. And Cesaroth, who had emerged as something of an ambassador among the Serpent Colony, was coiled on a heated rock by the fireplace. They had converted Grimmauld Place into Coalition headquarters. Maps covered the walls, marking Ministry raid locations and safe houses. A magical communication system, designed by George Weasley, allowed instant contact between Coalition outposts. "Kingsley's latest report is concerning," Hermione continued. "Nightshade has created a specialized task force called the Containment Division. Elite wizards trained specifically to capture magical beings. And they're developing new technology to counter our defenses." "Let them try," Ron said confidently. "The Forbidden Forest Coalition grows stronger every day. The Acromantulas have reinforced the boundary wards. The centaurs patrol day and night. Even the Mare people have extended their surveillance to all the lakes and streams within 50 miles. Harry appreciated Ron's optimism, but he couldn't shake a sense of foreboding. Firenze's warning about a traitor haunted him, and his expanding abilities sometimes overwhelmed him with the constant background murmur of creature communications. "We need to be careful," he cautioned. The more successful we are, the harder Nightshade will hit back. The fireplace flared green, and Kingsley Shacklebolt's head appeared in the flames. His expression was grim. "Harry, emergency at Safe House 7. Ministry forces have surrounded it. Multiple magical beings trapped inside, including a family of centaurs and several goblins who defected from Gringotts." Harry was already on his feet. "How many Ministry personnel?" "At least 20, including 6 from the new containment division. They have the essence extraction devices." "We're on our way," Harry said. "Alert the Forest Coalition. We need reinforcements." Kingsley nodded and disappeared. Harry turned to the others. "Ron, Hermione, Luna, with me. Neville, stay here and coordinate with the forest representatives. Cesaroth, spread word through the Serpent Network. We need all available allies at Safe House 7. The Serpent bobbed his head. "It will be done, Potter Speaker." They moved with practiced efficiency, gathering equipment George had developed for coalition operations, communication coins similar to the old DA. Galleons, shield cloaks that repelled minor hexes, and smoke bombs that created magical fog to confuse ministry tracking spells. Within minutes, they had apparat to a designated point near Safe House 7, a magically expanded cave system in the Yorkshire Dales, concealed by natural rock formations and magical wards. From their vantage point on a hillside, they could see the ministry forces had established a perimeter around the main entrance. Blue-robed wizards maintained a containment field while others prepared to breach the safe house's defenses. "They're using ward breakers," Hermione observed, studying the scene through omnioculars. "Advanced ones. They'll be through the outer defenses in minutes." "How many people inside?" Harry asked. "According to the log, 15, Ron answered, checking a magical ledger that tracked safe house occupancy. "Including 3 centaur foals and an injured merperson in a portable water environment." Harry felt sick. They couldn't evacuate quickly, especially not the most vulnerable. "We need to drive off the ministry forces long enough for reinforcements to arrive." "Ideas?" Luna lowered her omnioculars. "The hillside has a colony of burrowing mokes. I could speak with them, they might help create diversions underground." Harry nodded, continually surprised by Luna's knowledge of obscure magical creatures. Since joining the coalition, she'd revealed an almost instinctive ability to communicate with smaller beings that most wizards overlooked. "Do it. Ron, circle around to the eastern approach. Target their ward breakers first. Hermione, you're with me, we'll create a distraction from here, then move to reinforce the safe house entrance." As they prepared to execute their plan, Harry extended his awareness, reaching out with his wild speaker ability. He could sense the frightened magical beings inside the cave, the determined ministry wizards surrounding them, and, faintly, approaching allies responding to their call for help. "Coalition forces are coming," he told the others. "We just need to hold out for 20 minutes. Luna had already slipped away, communing with the local wildlife. Ron disillusioned himself and began circling to the eastern position. Hermione stood beside Harry, wand ready. "Harry, look," she whispered, pointing toward the ministry lines. A figure had emerged from their command tent, tall, silver-streaked hair, commanding presence. Nightshade was personally leading this operation. "He's escalating," Harry said grimly. "Making this a direct confrontation." "Harry." Hermione hesitated. "There's something else you should know. The ministry issued new employment regulations yesterday. Anyone found supporting the coalition will lose their positions immediately and face possible criminal charges." Harry looked at her sharply. "You didn't mention this earlier." "I didn't want to worry you," she admitted. "But Harry, this means Ron and I, if we're identified here today. Your careers are over," Harry finished. "Ron's place in the Aura Department. Your work on creature legislation." Hermione nodded, her expression torn but determined. "We knew this might happen. We've made our choice. Harry felt a wave of gratitude and guilt. Once again, his friends were sacrificing everything to stand with him. "Thank you," he said simply. Their moment was interrupted by a series of small explosions at the eastern perimeter. Ron's attack on the ward breakers had begun. Simultaneously, the ground beneath several Ministry wizards collapsed as Luna's Moke allies undermined the soil beneath their feet. "That's our cue," Harry said. He and Hermione rose, casting powerful shield charms before sending a barrage of spells toward the Ministry's containment field generators. Chaos erupted. Ministry forces scrambled to identify the multiple attack points. Harry and Hermione used the confusion to move closer to the cave entrance, targeting the wizards attempting to breach the safe house wards. "Potter." Nightshade's voice cut through the commotion. "Surrender now and your accomplices will be treated leniently. Like you treated the Acromantula younglings." Harry shouted back. "Or the merpeople from Loch Lomond. We know what happens in your research facilities, Nightshade." A vicious spell shot toward Harry, not a standard Ministry-approved spell, but something darker with a purple flare. He barely deflected it in time. "He's using combat-level spells," Hermione warned. "Not standard magical law enforcement protocols." "He's desperate," Harry realized. "This isn't just about capturing magical beings anymore. It's about stopping the coalition before it grows too powerful." They fought their way to the cave entrance, where the safe house's outer wards were beginning to fail under the Ministry's assault. Inside, Harry could sense the trapped beings preparing their own defense, centaurs with bows ready, goblins with their unique magic flickering between their fingers. A series of pops announced Ron rejoining them, ducking behind the same rock outcropping. "Eastern perimeter disrupted," he reported, breathing heavily. "But they're regrouping fast." "We need to reinforce the wards," Hermione said, already casting complex strengthening spells on the failing magical barriers. Harry extended his awareness again, searching for their reinforcements. A surge of relief washed over him as he sensed multiple magical signatures approaching rapidly from the west, centaurs, thestrals with riders, and the distinctive presence of giant spiders moving through the tree line. "Coalition forces almost here," he told Ron and Hermione. "Just a few more minutes." But those minutes stretched painfully as the Ministry's attack intensified. Nightshade had ordered his containment division specialists forward. They deployed their silver devices, the essence extractors, creating a field of blue energy that began to press against the safe house wards. "They're not just trying to break in," Hermione realized in horror. "They're attempting to extract magical essence directly through the wards." Inside the cave, Harry sensed pain erupting among the magical beings as their energy was forcibly pulled outward. It was barbaric, like magical vampirism on an industrial scale. "We have to stop those devices now." Harry stood, abandoning cover. "Bombarda Maxima." His spell struck one of the silver devices, shattering it in an explosion of blue light. The Ministry wizards operating it were thrown backward by the magical backlash. But there were 5 more devices still functioning, their combined power creating an overwhelming drain. Ron and Hermione joined Harry's offensive, targeting the remaining extractors. The Ministry forces concentrated their fire on the 3 of them, forcing them to divide their attention between attack and defense. A spell grazed Ron's shoulder, spinning him around. "I'm fine," he shouted before Harry could react, though his left arm hung limply. The situation was becoming desperate. Despite their efforts, the safe house wards were collapsing section by section. Harry could feel the terror of the beings inside, particularly the young ones. Then a new sensation washed over him, familiar yet strange. A series of hisses, whispers, and rustling sounds came from the ground at his feet. "We come, Potter Speaker." Dozens of serpents emerged from the earth, members of the Viridian colony led by Cesaroth, who had apparently traveled underground to reach them. The iridescent snake slithered toward the Ministry lines, causing immediate panic and disruption. "The serpents!" Harry called to Ron and Hermione. "They can get inside without breaking the wards," helped them reach the cave entrance. Together, they provided covering fire as the serpent colony moved in a coordinated pattern toward the safe house. Several ministry wizards, distracted by the unexpected reptilian attack, lost focus on their containment spells. Harry felt a powerful presence approaching from behind and turned to see Firenze galloping toward them, leading a charge of centaurs. Behind them came Thestrals carrying Luna and other coalition members, and at the edges of the field, Acromantulas moved with frightening speed toward the ministry's flanks. "The coalition comes," Firenze announced, knocking an arrow to his bow. The battle shifted dramatically as the reinforcements engaged. Centaur arrows disabled 2 more essence extractors. Acromantulas targeted the ministry's rear guard, forcing them to divide their attention. The serpents had reached the cave entrance and were slipping inside, where Harry knew they would help organize the trapped beings for potential evacuation. Nightshade's voice rose above the chaos, fury evident in every syllable. "Containment Division, deploy the suppression field. Authorization Code Morgana." The remaining ministry specialists pulled out small obsidian cubes, activating them simultaneously. A wave of heavy, oppressive magic rolled outward, and Harry felt his connection to the magical beings suddenly muffled. Around them, the coalition forces faltered, centaurs stumbling, Acromantulas moving sluggishly, even the Thestrals dropping lower to the ground as if fighting invisible weight. "What is that?" Ron gasped, his own magic seeming to struggle against the effect. "Some kind of magical dampening field," Hermione answered, her spells visibly weakening. "Targeted specifically at magical creatures." Harry felt his wild speaker ability being suppressed, the constant background awareness of magical beings reduced to a faint whisper. The ministry had developed technology specifically to counter creature magic. Nightshade advanced behind the protection of his suppression field, satisfaction evident on his aristocratic features. "You see, Potter. We've been studying your little coalition. Every species has magical vulnerabilities. Including your serpent friends." Inside the safe house, Harry could barely sense the magical beings anymore, but what he did feel was disturbing: weakness, disorientation, pain. The suppression field was harming them. Anger surged through Harry, clean, focused, and powerful. This was everything Voldemort had stood for: the subjugation of those deemed lesser, the exploitation of the vulnerable, the corruption of magic itself for power. He felt something shift within his core, a breaking of constraints, a reconnection to something ancient and profound. His wild speaker ability wasn't just being suppressed, it was evolving in response to the threat, adapting like a magical immune system. "Harry." Hermione's voice seemed distant. "Your eyes." He couldn't explain what was happening, only that he needed to embrace it. Harry closed his eyes, diving deeper into the strange magic unfurling inside him. It wasn't just about understanding magical beings anymore, it was about connecting with the fundamental magic that flowed through all of them, the shared essence that the ministry was so eager to harvest and control. When Harry opened his eyes again, he saw magic, flowing like luminous currents between all living things. The suppression field appeared as a dark web of interference, disrupting those natural flows. But the connections were still there, just distorted. "I can see it," he whispered. "The pattern. The connections." Without fully understanding how, Harry began to speak, not in Parseltongue or human language or centaur astronomy speak, but in something more fundamental. A language of pure magical intent that resonated with the essence of every magical being present. The sound was impossible to describe, part music, part mathematical equation, part primal force. It vibrated through the air, through the ground, through the magical fields themselves. Around him, the coalition forces responded. Not with conscious understanding, but with instinctive recognition. Centaurs raised their faces to the sky. Acromantulas clicked their pincers in synchronized rhythm. Serpents undulated in perfect harmony. Even the Thestrals trumpeted in chorus. The natural magic of each species began to align, reinforcing one another instead of remaining isolated. The suppression field faltered as the coordinated magical energy of the united beings pushed against it from all sides. "What is this?" Nightshade demanded, genuine fear replacing his confidence. "What are you doing, Potter?" Harry couldn't have explained it if he tried. He was a conduit, a translator not just between species but between different forms of magic itself. The wild speaker gift was revealing its true nature, not just communication but communion. The suppression field collapsed as the coalition's united magic overwhelmed it. The obsidian cubes cracked and shattered. Ministry wizards stumbled back in confusion and alarm as magical energy surged through the assembled creatures. "Fall back." Nightshade ordered his forces. "Tactical retreat. Now." The ministry personnel began disapparating, abandoning their equipment in their haste to escape. The coalition forces pressed forward, centaurs firing warning arrows to speed their departure, acromantulas reclaiming the perimeter. Within minutes, only Nightshade remained, standing alone facing Harry. His expression was a mixture of rage and fascination. "This isn't over, Potter," he said quietly. "What happened here today only proves how dangerous unregulated creature magic truly is. The ministry will respond accordingly." "Leave," Harry replied simply, his voice still resonating with strange harmonics. "While you still can." Nightshade's eyes narrowed. "You've changed the game. Remember that escalation works both ways." With that ominous warning, he disapparated. As soon as the immediate threat vanished, Harry felt the extraordinary magic begin to recede. The luminous connections faded from his vision. The unified resonance between species quieted. He swayed on his feet, suddenly exhausted. Hermione and Ron caught him before he could fall. "That was..." Ron seemed at a loss for words. "Bloody hell, mate. Are you all right?" Hermione asked, her expression concerned. "I think so," Harry managed. "Just drained." Around them, the coalition forces were recovering from the shared magical experience. There was a new awareness between the different species, a recognition of connection that hadn't existed before. Centaurs were allowing acromantulas to approach without hostility. Thestrals stood calmly while serpents moved nearby. Firenze approached, his blue eyes wide with wonder. "The wild magic," he said reverently. "Not seen in our world for centuries. The stars spoke truly of your gift, Harry Potter." "I don't understand what happened," Harry admitted. "You bridged the magical essence between all beings," Luna explained, having dismounted from a thestral. Her normally dreamy expression was unusually focused. "Daddy has written about this, the theoretical unified field of magical consciousness. You tapped into it." Cesaroth slithered forward, having emerged from the cave. "The ancient magic awakens, Potter speaker. As it was in the beginning times, when all magical beings spoke one tongue." The safe house occupants were emerging now that the danger had passed. The centaurs, goblins, and other beings looked shaken but unharmed. They regarded Harry with a mixture of awe and uncertainty. "We need to get everyone to secure locations," Harry said, focusing on practical matters despite his exhaustion. "Nightshade will regroup and come back stronger." "The Forest Coalition Sanctuary is ready," Firenze assured him. "We can accommodate all who need protection." As they organized the evacuation, Harry pulled Ron and Hermione aside. "You were both identified today. The Ministry will know you're actively supporting the coalition." Ron shrugged, wincing slightly at his injured shoulder. "Been waiting for them to sack me anyway. Place hasn't felt right since Nightshade started gaining influence." "My position was becoming untenable as well," Hermione acknowledged. "All my creature rights proposals were being blocked. At least now we can work openly for the coalition." Harry felt a mix of gratitude and guilt. "I'm sorry it came to this." "Don't be," Hermione said firmly. "What we saw today, what you did, it confirms we're on the right side of this. Nightshade is perverting magic itself, treating living beings as resources to be harvested. And we stopped him, Ron added with satisfaction. That was a proper defeat we handed them today. Harry wished he could share their optimism. Firenze's warning about a traitor still troubled him, and Nightshade's parting words suggested escalation rather than retreat. But for now, they had achieved a victory. The safe house occupants were safe. The coalition had fought together successfully for the first time. And Harry had discovered depths to his evolving ability that might prove crucial in the struggles ahead. As they prepared to return to Grimmauld Place, Harry noticed a ministry badge lying abandoned on the ground, dropped during the hasty retreat. He picked it up, turning it over in his hand. It belonged to the Containment Division, bearing the unsettling motto, "For the greater magical good." How many times had similar words justified atrocities? From Grindelwald to Voldemort, from blood purity to creature control, the underlying message remained the same: some magical beings were inherently more valuable than others. Harry pocketed the badge as evidence of what they were fighting. The wild magic had shown him the truth: all magical beings shared the same fundamental essence. It was that connection, that unity, that represented magic's true nature and power. And he was only beginning to understand what that might mean for their cause. The Ministry's response was swift and severe. By the following morning, emergency proclamations had been posted throughout Wizarding Britain. The Daily Prophet's headline left no room for ambiguity: Coalition declared illegal, Potter named Public Enemy 1. Harry read the article aloud to the assembled coalition leaders gathered in the expanded basement of Grimmauld Place. In response to yesterday's unprecedented attack on Ministry personnel, Minister Proudfoot has authorized special emergency powers to the Department for Regulation and Control of Magical Creatures. The so-called Forest Coalition has been classified as a magical terrorist organization. Harry Potter, identified as the leader of this dangerous group, has been designated a high-priority target for immediate apprehension. He looked up at the faces around him: Ron and Hermione, Kingsley, Luna and Neville, and representatives from various magical species including Firenze, Arachnier, Cesaroth, and others. Their spinning yesterday as an unprovoked coalition attack on Ministry forces, Harry continued. No mention of them attempting to extract magical essence from the safe house occupants. The Prophet has always been a Ministry mouthpiece, Kingsley observed grimly. But this goes beyond propaganda. They've enacted the Magical Security Act of 1812, not used since the Goblin Rebellions. What does that mean practically? Ron asked. Expanded powers of search and seizure. Suspension of certain magical rights protections. Authorization for Aurors to use higher-level combat spells. Kingsley's deep voice was somber. And a special provision for containment of dangerous non-human elements without standard due process. They're declaring war on magical beings, Hermione said, her face pale. Not just magical beings, Kingsley corrected. Anyone who supports them. Human sympathizers face the same penalties. Including you three. He nodded toward Harry, Ron, and Hermione. The room fell silent as the implications sank in. They were now officially outlaws, enemies of the very ministry they had once helped save from Voldemort. There's more, Harry said, scanning the rest of the article. Nightshade has been promoted to head of the newly formed Department of Magical Security and Essence Research. Directly answerable to the minister himself. He's consolidating power, Kingsley noted. Using the coalition as justification for what he's wanted all along: authority to pursue his essence extraction research without oversight. Firenze stamped a hoof, drawing attention. The stars warned of darkness rising in new forms. We centaurs have seen such cycles before. Fear becomes control, becomes oppression. The question is, what do we do now? Neville asked. He had fully committed to the coalition after yesterday's battle, offering his home as another safe house and his considerable botanical knowledge for protection and camouflage. We keep fighting, Harry said simply. But we need to be smarter about it. Yesterday showed both our strength and our vulnerabilities. The suppression field technology is concerning, Hermione noted. If they deploy that more widely, it could neutralize much of our magical advantage. But Harry broke through it, Luna pointed out. With the wild magic. All eyes turned to Harry, who shifted uncomfortably. He'd spent hours trying to understand what had happened during the battle, the strange state he'd entered, the visual perception of magical connections, the ability to somehow harmonize different types of creature magic. "I'm not sure I could do it again deliberately," he admitted. "It just happened when it was needed most." "The ancient magic comes when called, but not always as expected," Cesaroth observed. "It cannot be controlled like common spells." "Nevertheless, it demonstrates a fundamental weakness in Nightshade's approach," Kingsley said thoughtfully. "His technology treats magical essence as something that can be extracted, isolated, and controlled. But you showed that magic is fundamentally connective, Harry, flowing between beings rather than contained within them." "That gives me an idea," Hermione said, her eyes brightening with the familiar spark of intellectual inspiration. "What if we could develop countermeasures to their extraction technology? Not just protective shields, but something that actively disrupts the extraction process itself." "George might be able to help with that," Ron suggested. "His joke shop inventions often involve manipulating magical flows in unconventional ways." Harry nodded. "Good. Hermione, coordinate with George on countermeasures. Ron, we need to expand the Safe House network, the Ministry will be targeting known locations now." "Kingsley, what's your status at the Ministry?" The former Auror grimaced. "Tenuous. I'm under observation, though not yet openly accused of coalition sympathies. I can continue gathering intelligence for now, but my usefulness there may be limited." "Be careful," Harry warned. "We need you more than we need information." He turned to the creature representatives. "The Forbidden Forest Sanctuary must be strengthened. We've proven that different species can work together in battle, now we need to make that cooperation permanent." Arachnier clicked his mandibles thoughtfully. "The acromantulas will reinforce the outer defensive web networks. But we require safe passage guarantees from the centaurs." Forenza nodded, though Harry could sense his lingering reluctance. "The centaur herds will respect the new boundaries we established. Our archers will patrol the agreed sectors." The planning continued, with each group offering resources and accepting responsibilities. Harry watched with a mixture of pride and concern. The coalition was becoming a true organization, united, purposeful, but also increasingly militant out of necessity. Later, as the meeting dispersed, Harry found himself alone with Ron and Hermione in the kitchen. The three of them sat in exhausted silence for several minutes, processing the day's developments. "So," Ron finally said, attempting lightness, "public enemies. That's new." "Actually, it's not," Harry pointed out. "Undesirable number one, remember?" "This feels different though," Hermione said quietly. "Last time, we were fighting against a regime that had taken over the Ministry. This time we're fighting against the legitimate Ministry itself," Harry finished for her. "At least, legitimate in the eyes of most of the wizarding public." The weight of that reality settled over them. They weren't just breaking rules now, they were challenging the very institution they had grown up respecting, the governing body of their society. "Do you ever wonder if we're on the wrong side?" Ron asked suddenly. "Not about the creature rights part," he clarified quickly, seeing their expressions. "I mean, are we going too far? Creating this army of magical beings?" It was a question Harry had asked himself repeatedly. "I don't know," he admitted. "But I know what I saw in those extraction devices, beings in pain, their magic being forcibly harvested. I know what I felt in the safe house when the suppression field was activated. And I know Nightshade won't stop unless someone opposes him. Besides," Hermione added, "we tried working within the system first. I spent years pushing for creature rights legislation. You both saw how that turned out, blocked, buried, ignored." They fell silent again, each lost in their own thoughts. The coalition had changed them all. Ron had left his hard-earned Auror position. Hermione had abandoned her ministry career and legal reform efforts. Harry had become something he never expected, not just a defender of magical beings, but a bridge between them. A soft pop announced Creature's appearance. The old house elf looked unusually agitated. "Master Harry," he croaked, "Creature must report a visitor at the door." A wizard Creature does not know, but who knows the location of the house? Harry was instantly alert. Grimmauld Place was under Fidelius' charm protection, with Harry as secret keeper. No one could find it unless he had personally revealed its location. "Did they give a name?" he asked, already drawing his wand. "He calls himself Draco Malfoy, Master," Creature replied. "He says it is urgent." Harry, Ron, and Hermione exchanged startled looks. "Malfoy?" Ron said incredulously. "What the bloody hell is he doing here? And how does he know about Grimmauld Place?" Hermione added, equally suspicious. Harry considered the question. He certainly hadn't told Malfoy about the headquarters. Which meant someone else had, someone who knew the secret. A chill ran down his spine as Firenze's warning echoed in his mind, "The stars speak of a traitor." "Let's find out," Harry said grimly, heading for the door with Ron and Hermione close behind, wands drawn. When they reached the entrance hall, Harry peered through a magical peephole George had installed. Sure enough, Draco Malfoy stood on the doorstep, looking nervous and glancing repeatedly over his shoulder. He'd changed since Harry had last seen him, thinner, his pointed features more defined, dark circles under his eyes. "Cover me," Harry instructed his friends before carefully opening the door, wand pointed squarely at Malfoy's chest. Draco raised his hands immediately. "Potter. I need to talk to you. How did you find this place?" Harry demanded. "Blaise Zabini told me," Draco answered quickly. "He's been helping with your safe house network, apparently. Look, I know how this seems, but I have information you need to hear." Harry frowned. Zabini had indeed joined their network recently, offering his family's extensive properties as potential safe houses. But why would he reveal their headquarters location to Malfoy of all people? "Why should we trust you?" Ron asked, moving to stand beside Harry, his wand equally steady. "Because Nightshade approached me 3 days ago," Draco replied, his voice tense. "He wants me to use my family's connections to help locate magical creatures with rare properties. Specifically mentioned my knowledge of the Manor's collection of magical artifacts and creatures." "And you're telling us this why?" Hermione questioned from behind them. "Because I said no, and now I'm on a watch list." Draco's pale face showed genuine fear. "And because I know what they're really doing with the essence they're extracting. It's worse than you think." Harry studied his former school rival. Malfoy had walked a complex path since the war, not fully redeemed, but not the same arrogant bully either. The Malfoy family had lost much of their standing in wizarding society, their name tainted by association with Voldemort. Making a decision, Harry lowered his wand slightly. "You can come in. But we'll take your wand until we've heard you out." Draco hesitated only briefly before handing over his hawthorn wand. "Fair enough." They escorted him to the kitchen, maintaining a cautious distance. The coalition representatives had departed, leaving only Luna and Neville, who looked up in surprise at Malfoy's entrance. "Well, this is unexpected," Luna observed mildly. "Hello, Draco. Love good." He nodded awkwardly. "Longbottom. Sit," Harry instructed, gesturing to a chair at the table. "And explain exactly what you know about Nightshade's operations." Draco sat, his movements stiff with tension. "It started about 3 months ago. Nightshade began approaching pureblood families with collections. Magical creatures, artifacts with creature components, family records of rare magical properties." "Collections," Hermione repeated with distaste. "You mean illegal private menageries and black market items?" Draco didn't deny it. Call it what you will. Many old families have such things, passed down for generations. The ministry traditionally turned a blind eye as long as nothing dangerous was displayed publicly. And Nightshade wanted access to these collections? Harry prompted. Not just access. Detailed information on the magical properties. Particularly focusing on creatures or items that exhibited unusual magic. Self-sustaining enchantments. Regenerative properties. Adaptive spell resistance. Harry exchanged a glance with Hermione, whose analytical mind was clearly racing. He's searching for something specific, she said. A particular magical property or ability. Draco nodded. Exactly. And I think I know what it is. He leaned forward, lowering his voice despite the privacy charms surrounding the house. Magical transference. What does that mean? Ron asked. The ability to transfer magical properties from one being to another, Hermione answered, her face paling. Not just extracting essence, but implanting it elsewhere. In humans, Draco confirmed grimly. Specifically, wizards. A heavy silence fell over the kitchen as the implications sank in. He's creating super wizards, Harry said slowly. Enhancing human magic with stolen creature abilities. It's already happening, Draco continued. The Containment Division isn't just trained to capture magical beings, they're the first test subjects. Each has been enhanced with extracted magical properties. Enhanced speed from Merperson essence. Spell resistance from dragon scales. Sensory abilities from various magical creatures. That's what I sensed during the battle, Harry realized. The Containment Division wizards had an unusual magical signature, layered, complex, partially non-human. It's extremely experimental, Draco added. Dangerous. Some subjects don't survive the integration process. That's why they started with volunteers who believe in the cause. Magical eugenics, Hermione whispered, horrified. It's no different than Voldemort's pure-blood ideology, just a new approach to creating superior wizards. Harry's mind was racing. This explains so much, the targeted creature raids, the selective harvesting, the massive research funding. Nightshade wasn't just controlling magical beings, he was using them to create a new class of magically enhanced wizards loyal to him. Why are you telling us this? Harry asked Draco directly. What's your angle? Malfoy's face hardened. Contrary to what you might think, Potter, I learned something from the war. I saw where blind allegiance to magical supremacy leads. My family served a madman who destroyed everything he touched, including us. Noble sentiments, Ron said skeptically. But that doesn't explain why you'd risk yourself to warn us. Because Nightshade came to my mother next, Draco said, his voice tight with suppressed emotion. Said her unique magical resistance, the ability that let her lie to the Dark Lord about your death, would be valuable to the program. Asked her to volunteer for essence extraction study. Now Harry understood. Whatever Draco's political views, his devotion to his mother had always been genuine. It had saved Harry's life in the Forbidden Forest years ago. Where is Narcissa now? He asked. Safe. Hidden with relatives in France. Draco's expression was grim. But I stayed to warn others. There's a list, wizards and witches with unusual magical abilities who have been targeted for recruitment or study. Including you, Potter. Me? Harry was genuinely surprised. Why would Nightshade want me when he's declared me his enemy? Your Parseltongue was on the list initially, Draco explained. But after yesterday, after whatever you did with that wild magic. He shook his head. Capturing you has become his top priority. The implications were chilling. If Nightshade obtained Harry's evolving wild speaker ability, he could potentially create enhanced wizards capable of controlling magical beings directly. How do you know all this? Hermione asked, still suspicious. My father may have lost standing publicly, but he still has sources within the ministry. Old colleagues. Financial connections. Draco's mouth twisted bitterly. And Nightshade wasn't particularly careful about hiding his notes during our meeting. He's arrogant, thinks purebloods like us will naturally support his evolutionary leap for wizard kind. Harry studied Malfoy carefully, extending his wild speaker senses toward him. He couldn't read human minds, but he had developed a sensitivity to emotional states and intentions, particularly strong ones. What he felt from Draco was complex: fear, anger, resentment, but also a genuine disgust at what Nightshade was doing. There was no deception about his core message. "I believe you about the Essence Transference Program," Harry said finally. "But that doesn't explain how you knew to come here specifically, or why Zabini would tell you our location." Draco hesitated, then sighed. "Zabini didn't exactly tell me willingly. He was arrested yesterday. I visited him in holding before he was transferred to Azkaban. He was not in good condition. They tortured him." Hermione gasped. "Intensive interrogation is the official term," Draco replied grimly. "He held out on most things, but he let slip about Grimmauld Place when they used Veritaserum. I happened to be there because my father still has ministry access and brought me along to a reconciliation meeting with Nightshade." "And they just let you walk out with this information?" Ron asked skeptically. "They don't see me as a threat," Draco said with a hint of his old arrogance. "Former Death Eater from a disgraced but still pureblood family. They think I'm desperate to regain status, not oppose them." Harry exchanged looks with his friends. This changed everything. If Zabini had been captured and forced to reveal information, other coalition supporters might be compromised as well. And the Essence Transference Program represented an escalation far beyond what they had anticipated. "We need to verify this," Hermione said. "Kingsley might be able to confirm parts of it. And we should check on the other safe houses immediately," Ron added. "If Zabini revealed this location, he might have revealed others." Harry nodded in agreement. "Luna, can you contact the Quibbler? We need to warn the public about the Essence Transference Program." "Of course," Luna said, already standing. "Dad has been working on an article about magical hybridization dangers anyway. This will fit right in." "Neville, work with the Forest Coalition to strengthen the sanctuary defenses," Harry continued. "If Nightshade is creating enhanced capture teams, our existing protections may not be sufficient." As everyone moved to execute their tasks, Harry turned back to Draco. "You've taken a huge risk coming here. What do you want in return?" Malfoy looked momentarily surprised by the direct question. "Protection for my mother. And..." He hesitated, "a chance to help stop Nightshade. I have information about the Ministry's research facilities, locations, security protocols, personnel." "Why would you go that far?" Harry asked, genuinely curious. "This isn't your fight. Isn't it?" Draco's grey eyes were cold. "Nightshade's just Voldemort with better publicity and government funding. Different target, same ideology. I've seen where that path leads, Potter. I'm not walking it again." Harry considered this for a long moment. Working with Malfoy would be complicated, too much history, too much bad blood. But they needed every advantage, every source of information. "All right," he decided. "You can help. But understand this, if I sense any deception, any attempt to undermine us, I'll know. My abilities have evolved beyond just talking to snakes." Draco met his gaze steadily. "Fair enough. Though I have to say, Potter, you've become rather intimidating since school." A ghost of a smile crossed Harry's face. "You have no idea." As they began debriefing Draco for specific intelligence, Harry couldn't shake a lingering sense of foreboding. Nightshade's Essence Transference Program represented a fundamental threat not just to magical beings, but to the very nature of magic itself. The balance between different magical species had evolved over millennia. Now one ambitious wizard was attempting to short-circuit that evolution for power. The irony wasn't lost on Harry that his own evolving abilities represented a different kind of magical development, one based on connection rather than extraction, on understanding rather than control. Two paths of magical evolution were colliding, and the outcome would shape the future of their world. With Zabini captured and likely others compromised, the coalition faced its most serious challenge yet. And Firenze's warning about a traitor still haunted him. Was Draco the traitor the stars had foretold? Or was there another betrayal yet to come, from an even more trusted source? Either way, the war for magical freedom had entered a new and more dangerous phase. And Harry Potter, once again, found himself at its center. Chapter 3, the unified voice dawn broke over the forbidden forest, pale light filtering through ancient trees. Harry stood at the edge of the centaur clearing, watching the coalition sanctuary stirring to life. What had begun as a desperate refuge had transformed into a functioning community of magical beings over the past month. Centaurs patrolled alongside acromantulas. Merepeople communicated from an expanded pond system connected to underground waterways. House elves moved freely, many experiencing true independence for the first time. The Viridian serpent colony had established themselves in a rocky outcropping, with Cesaroth serving as their representative on the Coalition Council. "Still can't get over how weird this is," Ron said, joining Harry with 2 steaming mugs of tea. He handed one to Harry and gestured toward a group of young centaurs training alongside teenage wizards in defensive magic. 6 months ago, half these creatures wanted to kill each other. Now they're practically family. Harry sipped his tea, feeling the warmth spread through him. Necessity makes for strange alliances. More than necessity though, isn't it? Ron observed. It's you, mate. Your wild speaker gift changes how they see each other when they can all actually communicate. Before Harry could respond, a silver lynx Patronus bounded into the clearing. Kingsley's deep voice emerged, "Emergency. Ministry raiding the Lovegood residence. Luna and Xenophilius trapped inside. Coalition members in area moving to assist." Harry was already running before the message finished, Ron right behind him. They reached the command tent in the center of the sanctuary where Hermione was coordinating with Firenze and other coalition leaders. "Apparition to the hill behind the Lovegood house," Hermione instructed crisply, not wasting time with preambles. "Luna activated the emergency beacon 5 minutes ago. Nightshade is personally leading the raid." "Why the Lovegoods?" Ron asked. "The Quibbler. Latest edition exposed the Essence Transference Program," Hermione explained, gathering equipment. "Complete with testimony from 3 former test subjects. Hit newsstands this morning." Harry's jaw tightened. They'd known the article would provoke retaliation, but hoped to have more time to evacuate Luna and her father. "Who's already responding?" "Neville and George were closest. They're creating a diversion to buy time." Hermione handed Harry a communication coin. Draco's intelligence was right about the new enhanced containment division. They've got wizards with implemented acromantula reflexes and merperson sensory abilities. The mention of Draco still caused a reflexive tension among them. After a month of the former Slytherin providing consistently accurate intelligence, Harry had come to cautiously trust him. Ron remained skeptical, and Hermione analytical, tracking every piece of information to verify its accuracy. "Let's go," Harry said, gripping his wand. "Standard rescue protocol. In and out." They apparat to a wooded hill overlooking the distinctive rook-shaped Lovegood house. The scene below confirmed their worst fears. A dozen ministry wizards in the dark blue robes of the containment division had surrounded the house, while another team methodically dismantled the magical protections around it. Nightshade stood watching from a short distance, his silver-streaked hair unmistakable even from their vantage point. Neville and George were visible at the eastern perimeter, drawing fire from several ministry wizards while deploying what appeared to be modified portable swamps and decoy detonators. "They're outnumbered," Ron observed grimly. Harry extended his senses, reaching out with his wild speaker ability. After weeks of practice, he could now consciously direct it rather than waiting for it to manifest in moments of crisis. He felt the magical signatures below, the distinctive enhanced auras of the Containment Division wizards, the familiar presences of Neville and George, and inside the house, the unmistakable Luna and her father. But there was something else, smaller magical signatures moving through the trees around the property. Harry smiled as he recognized them. "We have allies already here," he told Ron and Hermione. "Garden gnomes, bowtruckles, and..." He concentrated harder. "A small herd of moon calves from the valley. They're responding to Luna's call." "Luna can call magical creatures now?" Ron asked, surprised. "Not like I can," Harry explained. "But she's spent years caring for local magical beings. They recognize when she's in danger." Hermione was already formulating a plan. "The smaller creatures can create distractions. We'll target the ward breakers first, then create an extraction corridor to the house." "I'll coordinate with the local creatures," Harry agreed. "Ron, support Neville and George. Hermione, focus on countering the ward-breaking team." They separated, moving to their positions with the practiced efficiency born of multiple rescue operations over the past month. Harry found a sheltered spot behind a large oak and closed his eyes, concentrating on connecting with the magical beings surrounding the property. Unlike the chaotic first experiences of his gift, Harry now understood how to modulate his communications. Each species required a different approach. Garden gnomes responded to simple emotional impressions, bowtruckles to patterns of magical energy, mooncalves to something akin to music. Harry crafted his message carefully: friends in danger. Help create confusion. Avoid capture. The response came as a wave of agreement, not in words, but in shared intention. Harry opened his eyes and signaled to Ron and Hermione that the allied creatures were ready. The coordinated attack began. Garden gnomes erupted from the ground around the Ministry's position, biting ankles and creating havoc. Bowtruckles dropped from trees onto the ward breakers, their sharp fingers interfering with the precise wandwork required. The mooncalves emerged from the tree line, their large silvery eyes emitting disorienting pulses of light that confused targeting. In the chaos, Harry, Ron, and Hermione advanced. Hermione's counterspells disrupted the ward-breaking attempts, while Ron joined George and Neville in driving back the eastern perimeter forces. Harry moved directly toward the house, deflecting spells and creating a path. "Potter." Nightshade's voice cut through the commotion. "I wondered when you'd show up." Harry didn't waste energy responding. Nightshade wanted to distract him, to make this personal. Instead, he focused on reaching the house, aware that every second counted. A Containment Division wizard appeared in his path, moving with unnatural speed and agility that confirmed Draco's reports of Acromantula essence enhancement. The wizard fired spells in such rapid succession that they blurred together in streaks of light. Harry didn't attempt to match the enhanced speed. Instead, he reached out with his wild speaker ability, sensing the unstable integration of human and Acromantula magic within his opponent. He focused on that juncture point and cast a targeted spell, Discordia. The wizard stumbled, his enhanced reflexes suddenly at war with his natural movements. The Acromantula essence and human magic had been artificially forced together. Harry's spell simply exposed the lack of true harmony between them. "The enhancements are unstable," he shouted to the others. "Target the integration points." Hermione immediately adapted, modifying her approach against another enhanced wizard. Harmonia Disrupto. Her opponent collapsed as his merperson sensory enhancements overwhelmed his human nervous system. Harry reached the front door of the Lovegood house just as the final wards collapsed. He burst inside, finding Luna and Xenophilius in the circular main room, surrounded by printing equipment and scattered papers. "Harry Potter!" Xenophilius exclaimed, looking simultaneously terrified and excited. Just as the pattern of Raxpert migration predicted. "Sorry we're late," Harry said, quickly checking both Lovegoods for injuries. We need to move now. Luna appeared calm despite the circumstances. We were expecting them after the article went to print. Dad insisted on staying to finish the international edition. Worth every risk. Xenophilius declared, clutching a stack of newspapers. The public must know about essence transference experiments. Harry didn't argue. The love goods had proven themselves among the coalition's most valuable assets, fearlessly publishing the truth when the prophet printed only ministry propaganda. Extraction route is being secured, Harry explained, guiding them toward the back door. Stay close to me. Outside, the battle had intensified. The coalition's local creature allies were being systematically neutralized by specialized containment spells. Ron, George, and Neville were holding their own but couldn't maintain their position much longer. Harry's communication coin heated in his pocket. Hermione's voice came through, Eastern route compromised. Secondary extraction point required. Copy, Harry responded. He surveyed the situation, spotting a potential path through the western garden where the moon calves were creating the most effective disruption. Moving to extraction point Delta. He led the love goods through the kitchen and out the back door, signaling to Ron and the others to converge on the new route. They had nearly reached the tree line when a series of loud cracks announced the arrival of reinforcements, but not for their side. Elite Aurors operate in a circle around the property, closing the escape routes. Among them, Harry recognized several former classmates and colleagues, including Terry Boot and Anthony Goldstein, former DA members now working for the ministry. Surrender immediately, commanded a senior Auror. By order of the Minister for Magic. Harry pushed the love goods behind him, calculating their rapidly diminishing options. The coalition members regrouped around him, forming a defensive circle. We don't want to fight you, Harry called to the Aurors. This is about protecting innocent magical beings from illegal experimentation. Save it for your trial, Potter, the senior Auror replied coldly. You're harboring illegal creatures and interfering with ministry operations. Stand down now. The standoff stretched for several tense seconds. Harry knew they were outnumbered and surrounded. Even with their experience and the help of the local magical creatures, a direct confrontation would likely end badly. Then he felt something, a powerful magical presence approaching rapidly from the southwest. Not human, not any of the creature species he'd grown familiar with, but something ancient and potent. A moment later, a thunderous voice echoed across the clearing, enough. All eyes turned to see an extraordinary sight emerging from the forest, a centaur larger than any Harry had seen, with a coat so white it seemed to glow in the morning light. His human torso was muscled and scarred, his face weathered with extreme age, and atop his head sat a crown of intertwined branches that pulsed with magical energy. Megorian, Firenzo whispered from nearby, his voice filled with awe. The Great Elder. He hasn't left the deep forest in a century. The massive centaur approached, and Harry felt the wild magic responding to his presence, like standing near a powerful magical ley line. The ministry forces seemed frozen, uncertain how to respond to this unexpected development. The stars speak of folly, Megorian declared, his voice carrying unnatural weight. Of wizards tampering with magics beyond their comprehension. Of balance disturbed. Nightshade stepped forward, visibly struggling to maintain his composure. This is a ministry operation. Your interference is illegal under, silence, essence thief, Megorian commanded, stamping a massive hoof that sent tremors through the ground. Your laws are meaningless against magic older than your kind's memory. The elder centaur turned his ancient eyes to Harry. Wild speaker. The forest has watched your growth. The time has come for greater action. Before Harry could respond, Megorian raised his arms to the sky. The crown of branches on his head flared with blinding light, and a pulse of pure magical energy radiated outward. Harry felt the wave wash over him, but instead of knocking him back, it seemed to flow through him, amplifying his wild speaker ability to unprecedented levels. Suddenly he could perceive magical connections extending in all directions, not just to the creatures immediately present, but spreading outward for miles, linking every magical being in an intricate, living network. Through this expanded awareness, Harry sensed something extraordinary happening. Across Britain, magical beings were responding to Magorian's call, centaur herds in Scotland, mere-people colonies along the coasts, even the dragons in the Welsh sanctuary. All awakening to a shared consciousness, a unified purpose. "What's happening?" Hermione asked, her voice distant through Harry's transformed perception. "The Great Convergence," Luna answered with unexpected authority. "Dad's been writing about the possibility for years. When magical beings unite their consciousness through ancient magic." The Ministry forces appeared increasingly alarmed as the air itself seemed to thicken with magical energy. Several Aurors lowered their wands, sensing they were witnessing something far beyond standard magical confrontation. Magorian spoke again, this time addressing all present. "For too long, the magical races have existed in fragmented isolation. This has allowed the youngest race, wizard kind, to assert dominance beyond their right. Today, that changes." He turned to Harry. "Wild Speaker, you have begun the work of unification. Now you must become the voice of all magical beings. Step forward and accept the convergence." Harry hesitated. Whatever Magorian was offering seemed immensely powerful but also frighteningly unknown. What exactly would that mean? "It means becoming the conduit through which all magical beings may speak as one," the elder centaur explained. "Not to rule them, but to translate their unified will to the wizarding world that has forgotten how to listen." Harry looked to his friends. Ron appeared bewildered, Hermione intensely curious, and Luna serenely confident. The decision, however, remained his alone. Taking a deep breath, Harry stepped forward. "I accept." Magorian placed his weathered hands on Harry's shoulders. The crown of branches glowed even brighter, and Harry felt a surge of magic unlike anything he'd experienced before, raw, primal, and vast beyond comprehension. His consciousness expanded exponentially, connecting with thousands of magical beings simultaneously. Their experiences, their knowledge, their perspectives flooded through him, not overwhelming him, but rather integrating with his awareness in perfect harmony. He remained Harry Potter, but he was also something more, a nexus point for the united consciousness of magical beings across Britain. When he opened his eyes, Harry saw the Ministry forces from a new perspective. Not as enemies, but as a species that had lost its way, forgotten its place in the greater magical ecosystem. "I speak now for all magical beings," Harry said, his voice resonating with harmonics that made the air vibrate. "The time of division ends today." Nightshade, recovering from his initial shock, attempted to reassert control. "Aurors. Containment protocols immediately. This is clearly some form of mass confundus." But the Aurors hesitated, transfixed by the magical transformation they were witnessing. Several lowered their wands entirely, sensing on some instinctive level that they faced not a threat but a fundamental realignment of magical reality. Through the convergence, Harry perceived Nightshade with perfect clarity, his fears, his ambitions, and the traumatic experience that had set him on this path. An image formed in Harry's mind, a young Nightshade watching helplessly as a rogue manticore killed his family, leaving him alone with a desperate need to control what he feared. "Cassius Nightshade," Harry said, speaking directly to the man's core being. "Your pain is seen. But the path you've chosen, harvesting magic from sentient beings, disrupting the balance of magical essence, leads only to greater suffering." Nightshade's composure cracked. "You know nothing of suffering. Magical creatures destroyed my family while the Ministry stood by, concerned more with the Manticore's protection status than human lives." "I see your memory," Harry acknowledged. "That tragedy was real. But your response, treating all magical beings as resources to be controlled and harvested, only perpetuates the cycle of fear and violence." While maintaining the convergence, Harry turned to address the Aurors and Ministry officials. "You've been told that essence transference represents progress, human mastery over magical properties. What you haven't been told is that forced extraction destabilizes the very fabric of magic itself. Through the unified consciousness, Harry drew forth knowledge from ancient magical beings, centaurs who had observed magical patterns for millennia, dragons whose very bodies were vessels of primal magical forces, mere people whose songs preserved histories older than wizarding civilization. Magic isn't a resource to be extracted and transferred, he continued. It's a living system. Each magical species evolved with specific magical properties for a reason, maintaining balance in the greater magical ecosystem. The senior Auror had lowered his wand completely now. What are you saying, Potter? I'm saying that Nightshade's experiments aren't just unethical, they're dangerous to all magic users. The essence transference process creates temporary enhancements but causes long-term magical degradation. The test subjects from the early trials are already showing signs of magical collapse. Harry sensed recognition among several Aurors. They had witnessed colleagues suffering unexplained magical instabilities after participating in the enhancement program. Nightshade's face contorted with rage. Lies. The process is being perfected. A few failures are inevitable in any great advancement. Show them, Megorian instructed Harry. Show them the truth the Ministry hides. Harry raised his hands, channeling the convergence energy to create a massive magical projection visible to all present. Images formed in the air, Ministry facilities where captured beings were held in essence extraction chambers, test subjects writhing as unstable magical properties were forced into their bodies, and most damning, medical records documenting the deteriorating conditions of the first volunteers. These are not fabrications, Harry said as the images rotated for all to see. These are memories and observations from magical beings across Britain, unified through the convergence. This is happening now, in Ministry facilities approved at the highest levels. The impact was immediate and profound. Several Aurors looked physically ill. Others exchanged troubled glances. Even those who had been committed to the Ministry's position seemed shaken by the undeniable evidence. Nightshade, seeing his authority crumbling, made a desperate move. He drew not a wand but a small obsidian device from his robes, an advanced prototype of the essence extractors. Before anyone could react, he activated it, directing its focus at Megorian. The great elder centaur roared in pain as blue energy began to pull from his body, but Harry, connected to Megorian through the convergence, felt the attack as if it were on his own body. Acting instinctively, he redirected the unified magical consciousness to counter the extraction. What happened next astonished everyone present. Instead of fighting against the extraction magic, Harry allowed it to connect with the convergence, but rather than flowing out of Megorian, magic began flowing in reverse, back through the device and into Nightshade himself. The Ministry official screamed as pure, unfiltered wild magic surged into him, not to harm, but to reveal. For perhaps the first time in his life, Cassius Nightshade experienced magic as it truly was, not a tool to be wielded or a resource to be harvested, but a living, conscious force that connected all magical beings in a delicate balance. The obsidian device shattered, unable to contain the reversal. Nightshade collapsed to his knees, overwhelmed by the brief but intense communion with the magic he had sought to control. In the silence that followed, Harry maintained the convergence but gentled its manifestation, allowing the unified consciousness to speak through him with more measured voice. The coalition doesn't seek to overthrow the Ministry or separate magical beings from wizards, he explained. We seek a restoration of balance, recognition that all magical species have rights and roles in maintaining magical harmony. The senior Auror stepped forward cautiously. Potter. What exactly are you asking for? An immediate end to essence extraction experiments. Investigation into Nightshade's program. And most importantly, recognition of a new magical beings council with representatives from all species, including wizards, to ensure balanced governance moving forward. Terry Boot spoke up from among the Aurors. That would require changes to fundamental ministry structure. The minister will hear our unified voice, Harry said with quiet confidence. As will the Wiesengemot. The convergence can't be maintained indefinitely, but its message will resonate beyond this day. He gestured to the love goods. The international edition of the Quibbler is already carrying the truth to magical communities worldwide. The ICW will not stand by while Britain conducts illegal essence harvesting. The standoff had transformed into something none of them had anticipated, not a battle, but a turning point. The Ministry forces no longer faced a band of rebellious wizards and creatures, but a unified magical consciousness speaking with undeniable authority. The senior Auror made a decision. "Stand down," he ordered his team. "No arrests today. This situation requires consultation with the minister." A wise choice, Megorian acknowledged, the glow from his antler crown gradually subsiding. As the ministry forces prepared to depart, Harry addressed them once more through the convergence. "Remember what you've witnessed today. Magic is not divided between human and non-human. It flows through all magical beings, connecting us in ways we've forgotten. The future depends on remembering this truth." The Aurors disapparated one by one, leaving only Nightshade, who was being restrained by two of his own people. The broken remains of his extraction device lay scattered around him, and his eyes held the haunted look of someone whose fundamental worldview had been shattered. As the last ministry officials disappeared, Harry felt the convergence beginning to naturally recede. Megorian removed his hands from Harry's shoulders, and the overwhelming connection to thousands of magical beings gradually returned to more manageable levels. "The great convergence cannot be maintained for long," the elder centaur explained. "Its purpose today was to awaken, to demonstrate, to unite. The ongoing work falls to you, Wild Speaker, and to your coalition." Harry nodded, feeling simultaneously exhausted and energized. "Thank you for coming when we needed you most." Megorian's ancient face showed the ghost of a smile. "The stars foretold your path long before you walked it, Harry Potter. Just as they foretold this day of awakening." He looked toward the horizon. "Now I must return to the deep forest. My strength outside our sacred groves is limited." As the great elder departed, Harry turned to find his friends watching him with varying expressions of awe and concern. "Mate," Ron said finally, "what the bloody hell just happened?" Harry laughed, the sound surprisingly normal after the otherworldly voice of the convergence. "I'm still figuring that out myself." Hermione was already in analysis mode. "The magical theory implications are staggering. A unified consciousness across species lines challenges everything we've been taught about magical taxonomy and hierarchy." "It felt right," Harry said simply. "Like remembering something we all once knew but had forgotten." Luna nodded as if this made perfect sense. The boundaries between magical beings were never as solid as wizards pretended. Dad's been saying for years that magic itself is a single entity expressing through diverse forms. For once, Ron admitted, your dad might have been right about something. Xenophilius beamed with vindication. The Quibbler stands for truth, however uncomfortable. And today's truth will make tomorrow's headline. The great convergence returns, magical beings unite through Potter connection. Despite their momentary victory, Harry knew the real work was just beginning. We should return to the sanctuary. The Coalition Council needs to hear about what happened, and we need to prepare for whatever comes next. As they gathered to depart, Harry felt a lingering connection to the briefly unified consciousness of magical beings across Britain. Though the full convergence had receded, his wild speaker ability had been permanently expanded by the experience. He could sense magical beings at greater distances, understand their communications with greater clarity, and most importantly, help translate between species with unprecedented precision. The potential implications were both exciting and daunting. For the first time in centuries, true communication between all magical beings seemed possible. And with communication came the possibility of lasting peace. 3 days later, Harry stood before the newly formed Coalition Council in the expanded center of the Forbidden Forest Sanctuary. Representatives from every magical species had gathered, centaurs, merpeople, in specially designed water spheres, goblins, house elves, vila, vampires, werewolves, and many others who had joined the coalition in the weeks since its formation. The events at the Lovegood property had catalyzed unprecedented changes. The international wizarding community had responded with shock to the Quibbler's exposé on essence extraction. The ICW had dispatched investigators to Britain. And most significantly, Minister Proudfoot had requested formal negotiations with the coalition. The minister's proposal is genuine, Kingsley reported to the assembled council. Nightshade has been suspended pending investigation. The essence extraction program has been halted. And most importantly, they're open to discussing formal representation for magical beings in governance structures. Words, rumbled a goblin representative named Nagnok. Wizard promises have proven worthless before. Not just words this time, Hermione countered, displaying a formal document. This is a magically binding preliminary agreement. The ministry acknowledges wrongdoing in the essence extraction program and commits to restitution for affected beings. And the captured beings still held in research facilities? Forenza asked. Release operations are already underway, Ron answered. 5 facilities liberated in the past 2 days, with minimal resistance. Most ministry personnel are distancing themselves from Nightshade's program now that it's been exposed. Harry listened to the discussion, feeling both pride in how far they'd come and awareness of how much work remained. The convergence had created a moment of clarity, but sustaining meaningful change would require ongoing effort from all sides. The question before us, he said when the initial reports concluded, is whether to accept the minister's invitation to formal negotiations, and who should represent the coalition. Debate erupted immediately. Despite their united stand against the ministry's oppression, the various magical species had widely differing priorities and historical grievances. Centaurs demanded expanded forest territories. Goblins sought recognition of their metallurgical rights. House elves were divided between those seeking full independence and those preferring reformed service relationships. Harry watched the chaotic discussion with a new perspective, his enhanced wild speaker ability letting him perceive not just words but the deeper needs and fears underlying each position. After allowing the debate to continue for some time, he stood and raised his hand for attention. I understand everyone's concerns, he began. For centuries, magical beings have been classified, regulated, and controlled by wizard-centric laws. Trust doesn't come easily after such history. He paused, choosing his next words carefully. But what the convergence showed us was that despite our differences, we share a fundamental connection through magic itself. Our diversity isn't a weakness to be overcome, it's a strength to be embraced. Harry gestured to the council members. Each species brings unique perspectives and abilities. Together, we create a balanced magical ecosystem. The ministry needs to recognize this balance, not as a concession, but as a fundamental truth about how magic works. Fine words, said a vampire representative with aristocratic bearing. But how does this translate to practical governance? Wizards have held exclusive power for centuries. They won't surrender it willingly. Not surrender, Harry corrected. Transform. The old model of wizards governing all magical beings is broken. But so would be any system that excludes wizards entirely. We need integrated governance, representatives from all magical species working together on issues that affect the magical world as a whole. Cesaroth, representing the serpent colonies, raised his head. The wild speaker offers wisdom. Separate but connected. Like the forest network, each species with its territory and ways, but joined in communication and mutual protection. As Harry translated, heads nodded around the council circle. The forest network provided a natural model that many magical beings already understood, independence within interdependence. I propose a magical beings accord, Harry continued. A binding agreement establishing a new governing council with representatives from all magical species. The ministry would maintain jurisdiction over purely wizarding affairs, but matters affecting multiple species would require council approval. Hermione elaborated on the legal framework, drawing on her years of ministry experience. We've drafted preliminary terms based on international magical cooperation treaties, modified to recognize the sovereignty of each magical species within their traditional domains. The council members reviewed the proposed terms, engaged in spirited debate over specific points, and gradually worked toward consensus. Harry, Ron, and Hermione answered questions, mediated disagreements, and refined the proposal based on feedback. By nightfall, the Coalition Council had reached a historic decision. They would accept the minister's invitation to negotiations, sending a diverse delegation representing the full spectrum of magical beings. Harry would serve as lead negotiator, with his wild speaker ability essential for ensuring all perspectives were accurately translated. As the council dispersed, Luna approached Harry. "You've done something remarkable," she said, her dreamy voice carrying its usual note of simple truth. "You're bridging worlds that have been separate for centuries." Harry shook his head. "Not me. All of us together." "You were the catalyst," she insisted. "Just as you were meant to be." Before Harry could respond, Draco Malfoy entered the council area, escorted by coalition guards. Since providing his initial intelligence about Nightshade's program, Malfoy had become an increasingly valuable ally, using his family connections to gather information and secure safe passage for threatened magical beings. "Potter," he acknowledged with a nod. "The negotiations team from the Ministry has been selected. Thought you should know who you'll be facing." "Anyone concerning?" Harry asked. "Mixed group. Some hardliners, some moderates." Draco hesitated. "And my father?" Harry raised his eyebrows in surprise. "Lucius is representing the Ministry?" "Not officially. He's there as a special advisor on pure-blood interests." Draco's expression was complex. "He's positioning himself as a moderate voice now, trying to salvage family influence." "Can he be trusted?" Hermione asked bluntly. Draco snorted. "About as far as you can throw him without magic. But he's a political survivor above all else. If he senses the tide turning toward cooperation with magical beings, he'll find a way to present himself as having always supported reasonable accommodation." Harry considered this information. Having Lucius involved might actually help. "He'll give traditionalists cover to support the accord if he endorses it." "My thoughts exactly," Draco agreed. "Just don't turn your back on him." As Draco departed to continue his intelligence work, Ron shook his head. "Still can't believe we're working with Malfoy. Next thing you know, we'll be inviting Umbridge to tea." "People change," Harry said, though he shared some of Ron's lingering skepticism. "Sometimes out of principle, sometimes out of pragmatism." "Speaking of change," Hermione said, her tone shifting to something more personal, "how are you handling the after-effects of the convergence? You've been different since it happened." Harry appreciated her directness. The truth was, he had been changed by the experience in ways he was still discovering. The expanded wild speaker ability had become a constant presence, a background awareness of magical beings near and far, their emotions, needs, and communications filtering through his consciousness like ambient music. "It's intense," he admitted. "But not overwhelming anymore. I'm learning to modulate it, focus when I need specific information, let it fade to background when I don't." "And the connection to the unified consciousness?" Luna asked with characteristic insight. Megorian said the full convergence couldn't be maintained, but there's a residual link, Harry confirmed. "Not the complete unity we experienced, but a thread connecting me to something larger. Almost like a dormant network that could be awakened again if needed." Ron looked concerned. "That's a lot of responsibility, mate. And a lot of voices in your head." "It's not exactly voices," Harry tried to explain. "More like awareness. Understanding. As if I can perceive the pattern that connects all magical beings." Hermione studied him thoughtfully. "The theoretical implications are fascinating. If magic itself has some form of unified consciousness." "That's a philosophical debate for another time," Harry said with a smile, knowing how Hermione could disappear down intellectual rabbit holes. "Right now, we need to focus on the negotiations. The Ministry team arrives tomorrow. As his friends left to make preparations, Harry remained in the council clearing, reaching out with his enhanced senses to feel the pulse of the sanctuary. Hundreds of magical beings, once enemies or strangers to each other, now coexisting in a fragile but growing harmony. It wasn't perfect, tensions remained, old prejudices occasionally flared, but it was unprecedented progress. The path ahead would be challenging. Translating the brief unity of the convergence into lasting political change would require patience, compromise, and persistence. Not everyone in the wizarding world would welcome a new balance of power that recognized the rights and autonomy of other magical species. But for the first time, Harry felt genuine hope. Not just for temporary victory, but for fundamental transformation, a new chapter in magical history where communication replaced control, and diversity strengthened rather than divided. As night fell over the Forbidden Forest sanctuary, Harry Potter, the reluctant wild speaker who had once again found himself at the center of magical history, allowed himself a moment of quiet satisfaction. Whatever challenges tomorrow brought, they would face them together, united not by force or fear, but by the profound connection that magic itself had always intended. The Great Hall of Hogwarts had witnessed many historic moments over the centuries, sortings, celebrations, and once, the final defeat of Lord Voldemort. Today it hosted another milestone, the first formal negotiations between the Ministry of Magic and the United Coalition of Magical Beings. At Headmistress McGonagall's suggestion, Hogwarts had been chosen as neutral ground for the talks. The school represented both wizarding tradition and the possibility of new beginnings through education. The symbolic value wasn't lost on either side. The hall had been transformed. Instead of 4 long house tables, a massive circular table occupied the center, with the various delegations arranged around it. The ministry contingent, led by Minister Proudfoot himself, occupied one section. The coalition representatives filled the remainder, centaurs standing proudly behind specially designed supports, merpeople in floating water spheres, goblins on raised platforms to equalize height, house elves, including Creature, who had insisted on representing the noble elf families, and delegates from over a dozen other magical species. Harry, seated at the position traditionally occupied by the headmaster at the high table, surveyed the historic gathering. Wizards and magical beings who had for centuries related through hierarchy and regulation now sat as equals at a single table. Minister Proudfoot, a stern-faced wizard with a reputation for bureaucratic efficiency rather than vision, opened the proceedings. "Welcome to this unprecedented gathering," he began, his voice magically amplified. "Recent events have made clear that certain ministry policies regarding magical beings require reconsideration. We are prepared to discuss reasonable accommodations within existing legal frameworks." Harry noted the careful language, accommodations, rather than rights, within existing frameworks, rather than structural change. The ministry was offering concessions, not transformation. When his turn came to speak, Harry stood, feeling the weight of responsibility not just for his friends or the coalition, but for the united consciousness he had briefly experienced through the convergence. "Thank you, Minister, for agreeing to these talks," he began. "What we seek isn't accommodation within flawed structures, but a new foundation for magical governance, one that recognizes the fundamental interconnection of all magical beings." He gestured around the table. "Each species represented here has unique magic, unique perspectives, and unique contributions to make to our shared world. The recent essence extraction program demonstrated the dangers of treating magical beings as resources rather than as partners in maintaining magical balance." Lucius Malfoy, seated among the ministry delegation with his characteristic aristocratic detachment, spoke next. "While recent excesses may be acknowledged, Mr. Potter's vision of magical beings as equals in governance represents a radical departure from centuries of tradition. The wizarding world has maintained magical secrecy and stability precisely because of centralized control. Centralized control that has repeatedly failed," Hermione countered, serving as Harry's deputy negotiator. "The Goblin rebellions, Centaur territory disputes, giant conflicts, all stemming from attempting to impose wizard-centric regulations on beings with their own societies and magic. The ministry cannot simply abdicate its regulatory authority, argued a department head whom Harry recognized as a Nightshade ally. The magical world requires unified standards and policies. Unity does not require uniformity, Harry responded. The convergence demonstrated that magical beings can maintain their unique natures while participating in a greater whole. The negotiations proceeded through the day, with passionate arguments from both sides. The coalition presented evidence of ministry abuses, while ministry representatives raised concerns about public safety and magical secrecy if regulations were relaxed. By evening, both sides were frustrated but still engaged. A short recess was called before the final session of the day. During the break, Harry found himself approached by Lucius Malfoy, who had separated from the main ministry group. "A moment of your time, Mr. Potter," Lucius requested with practiced courtesy. "Away from our colleagues." Wary but curious, Harry followed him to a quiet corner of the hall. Hermione watched from a distance, ready to intervene if needed. "Impressive coalition you've built," Lucius observed, his voice low and measured. "Especially the convergence demonstration. Most persuasive." "It wasn't a demonstration," Harry corrected. "It was a natural manifestation of magical unity." Lucius waved away the distinction. "Semantics. What matters is its political impact." He leaned closer. "The ministry is divided. Nightshade supporters are in disarray after the exposure of his program, but hardliners still resist meaningful change." "Why are you telling me this?" Harry asked bluntly. A thin smile crossed Lucius's aristocratic features. "Because I recognize shifting currents, Mr. Potter. I always have." "You're offering to support our proposals," Harry realized. "For a price. Let's call it a mutual accommodation. The Malfoy family has certain historical interests in magical creature regulation that I would like preserved in any new arrangement." Harry studied the older wizard carefully, extending his wild speaker senses to perceive beyond words. What he felt from Lucius wasn't ideological conviction but pure pragmatism, a calculating mind recognizing which way the political winds were blowing and adjusting accordingly. "Any agreement must protect the rights of all magical beings," Harry said firmly. "Non-negotiable." "Of course," Lucius agreed smoothly. "But rights can be articulated in ways that preserve certain, traditional relationships. The proposed magical beings accord need not eliminate all existing hierarchies overnight." Harry understood the offer. Lucius would deliver moderate ministry support for the accord in exchange for gradual rather than immediate implementation, allowing families like the Malfoys to adapt their traditional relationships with magical beings over time. "I'll bring your perspective to the coalition," Harry said noncommittally. "But I don't speak for them alone. Each species has its own representative and voice." Lucius's expression flickered with annoyance before settling back into practiced diplomacy. "A novel approach to governance. We shall see how it functions in practice." As Lucius returned to the ministry delegation, Hermione joined Harry. What did he want? To position himself on the winning side, Harry answered. He's offering support in exchange for graduated implementation. Hermione considered this. That might actually help with the transition. Some of the more radical changes would face less resistance if phased in over time. My thought as well, Harry agreed. But it's not my decision alone. When negotiations resumed, Harry brought Lucius's proposal to the full coalition rather than keeping it private. Transparency had become a core principle of their approach, distinguishing them from the ministry's traditional secrecy. The coalition representatives debated the merits of a phased implementation, with strong opinions on both sides. The goblins and centaurs pushed for immediate recognition of territorial rights, while house elves and merpeople saw benefits in gradual transitions. By midnight, they had reached a tentative framework agreement, the first draft of what would become the Magical Beings Accord. It established three core principles: recognition of each species' inherent magical sovereignty, creation of a multi-species magical council with genuine legislative power, and phased implementation over 3 years to allow for stable transition. As the meeting adjourned for the night, Minister Proudfoot approached Harry directly. "Potter," he said with grudging respect, "when you began this coalition, many at the ministry dismissed it as another example of your rebellious tendencies. I see now it represents something more substantial." "It represents the future, Minister," Harry replied. "A better balance for all magical beings. Perhaps." Proudfoot wasn't fully convinced but had moved beyond outright opposition. "But implementing this accord will face significant resistance. The Wisengamot contains many traditionalists who see wizard supremacy as natural law rather than political choice." "Then they'll need to be persuaded otherwise," Harry said. "The convergence showed that magical harmony strengthens all magic, including wizards. Fighting against that natural balance only weakens us collectively." The minister studied him with new interest. "You've changed, Potter. There's something different about you since this wild speaker ability emerged." Harry smiled slightly. "I've gained perspective. When you can genuinely understand how centaurs, goblins, mere-people, and dozens of other beings experience magic, it changes how you see everything." As negotiations continued over the following week, that expanded perspective proved crucial. When disputes arose between different species, historical grievances, competing territorial claims, divergent priorities, Harry's wild speaker ability helped translate not just words but underlying needs and fears. Gradually, the Magical Beings Accord took shape, a revolutionary document that would transform magical governance in Britain and potentially serve as a model for magical communities worldwide. It balanced autonomy with cooperation, tradition with innovation, and most importantly, established genuine equality between magical species while acknowledging their natural differences. On the final day of negotiations, as representatives prepared to sign the preliminary agreement, Harry stood to address the historic gathering once more. "What we've created here isn't just a political document," he began, looking around at the diverse beings who had once been divided by suspicion and inequality. "It's a recognition of what magic itself has always been, a living network connecting all magical beings in a delicate, powerful balance." He continued, feeling the residual connection to the convergence strengthening his words. "The Essence Extraction Program represented the worst of wizarding arrogance, treating that living network as a resource to be harvested and controlled. This accord represents the opposite approach, honoring the unique magic of each species while recognizing our fundamental interconnection." Minister Proudfoot, who had evolved considerably during the negotiations, spoke next. "The Ministry of Magic acknowledges the errors of past approaches. This accord represents not concession but correction, a return to a more balanced understanding of magic itself." One by one, the representatives signed the document, some with quills, others with claws, still others with magical imprints unique to their species. As each signature was added, a subtle magic built within the Great Hall, not manufactured but arising naturally from the historic unity being established. When the final signature was applied, that magic culminated in a spontaneous manifestation, a shimmering aurora of light that spread across the enchanted ceiling, reflecting the unique magical signature of each species represented below. It wasn't planned or conjured, but rather a natural response of magic itself to the restoration of balance among its children. Harry felt the wild magic respond within him, a warm recognition of harmony restored. Not perfect, not complete, there would be challenges ahead, resistance to overcome, new balances to negotiate, but a profound step toward healing a divide that had weakened the magical world for centuries. As the formal ceremony concluded and the various delegations began to disperse, Ron clapped a hand on Harry's shoulder. "So," he said with characteristic directness, "saved the world again, have we?" Harry laughed. "Just doing my part." "Your part seems to keep getting bigger," Hermione observed, joining them. "First defeating Voldemort, now transforming magical governance. What's next, reorganizing Gringotts?" "Don't even joke about that," Ron groaned. "The goblins are territorial enough already." Looking around the Great Hall, now buzzing with conversation as delegates from different species interacted with newfound ease, Harry felt a deep satisfaction unlike anything he'd experienced before. This wasn't victory through combat or sacrifice, but through understanding, communication, and unity. "I keep thinking about what Cesaroth told me when this all began," he said quietly to his friends. "That in the wild, survival depends not on the strongest creature, but on the strongest connections between creatures." Hermione nodded thoughtfully. "That's true for magical society as well. We've been weakened by artificial divisions, by treating difference as hierarchy rather than diversity." "Well, I for one am glad to be done with political negotiations," Ron declared. "Give me a straightforward acromantula any day over ministry bureaucrats." They shared a laugh, the tension of the past weeks finally breaking. The coalition had achieved what many had thought impossible, a fundamental restructuring of magical governance based on equality and cooperation rather than control and regulation. As they prepared to return to the Forbidden Forest Sanctuary, where many coalition members still resided while the accord was implemented, Harry reflected on the extraordinary journey that had begun with a colony of magical serpents facing ministry capture. His Parseltongue ability, once considered a dark gift tied to Voldemort, had evolved into something far greater, a capacity to bridge the divisions between all magical beings. The wild speaker gift had turned a curse into a blessing, a stigma into a strength. And in doing so, it had transformed not just Harry Potter, but potentially the entire magical world. 1 year later, Harry stood at the edge of the Centaur clearing in the Forbidden Forest, watching as delegates arrived for the inaugural session of the Magical Beings Council. The Forest Sanctuary, once a temporary refuge, had evolved into a permanent diplomatic center where representatives from all magical species could meet on equal terms. Construction teams, a mix of wizards, goblins, and other beings with complementary magical skills, had created a remarkable complex of structures designed to accommodate the diverse needs of various species. Underground chambers connected to lake systems for mere people, elevated platforms among the trees for flying beings, temperature-controlled environments for climate-sensitive creatures. At the center stood a grand circular chamber, its design inspired by both the Great Hall of Hogwarts and the stone circle where the coalition had first formed. It was here that the council would meet regularly to address issues affecting multiple magical species. "Impressive, isn't it?" Hermione said, joining Harry at his observation point. "From emergency coalition to formal governance in a year." With plenty of resistance along the way, Harry reminded her. The implementation of the accord had faced significant challenges, protests from wizarding traditionalists, assassination attempts against coalition leaders, sabotage of integration efforts. But the momentum had proven unstoppable, particularly after magical communities worldwide began adopting similar models. "The transitional period is almost complete," Hermione noted. "The ministry reorganization is proceeding on schedule. The Department for Regulation and Control of Magical Creatures has been replaced by the Office of Interspecies Cooperation." Harry nodded, pleased with the progress but aware of ongoing challenges. "And Nightshade? Trial concludes next week. Given the evidence, conviction is certain. The essence extraction program has been permanently banned under international magical law." They watched as more delegates arrived, centaurs in ceremonial regalia, goblin representatives in formal banking attire, house elves wearing the new symbolic sashes that signified their independent status, mere people being transferred to the specialized water channels that would carry them to the council chamber. Ron approached, having finished his security inspection. As head of the council's protection team, he had developed new defensive strategies that incorporated the unique abilities of various magical species. "All clear," he reported. "Though I still don't trust those vampire delegates. Always looking at everyone like they're sizing up dinner options." "Ron," Hermione chided, "that's exactly the kind of species stereotyping we're working to overcome. I'm just saying, maybe schedule their sessions after lunch, not before," he defended with a grin. Their banter was interrupted by Firenze, who approached with formal dignity. The centaur had been elected as the first lead representative of the council, a rotating position that would pass between species annually. Wild Speaker, he greeted Harry with the title that had become both formal recognition and term of respect. "The stars align favorably for today's gathering." "I'm glad to hear it," Harry replied. We could use some favorable alignments. The path forward remains challenging, Firenze acknowledged. Centuries of division cannot be healed in a single year. But the foundation is strong. He gestured toward the council chamber. Will you address the opening session as planned? Harry nodded. Though he held no official position in the new council structure, his unique role as wild speaker made him a natural bridge between different species. I'll be there. As Firenze departed to prepare for the ceremony, Draco Malfoy approached their group. His role had evolved significantly over the past year, from reluctant informant to dedicated reformer. After his father's calculated support for the Accord had secured the Malfoy family's political rehabilitation, Draco had surprised many by demonstrating genuine commitment to the new balanced approach. Potter, he greeted with his characteristic economy of words. Final security sweeps complete. Anti-disruption wards in place. Despite significant progress, not all wizards had accepted the new order. A faction calling themselves the Magical Heritage Protection League had emerged, dedicated to restoring wizard supremacy and dismantling the Accord. Their protests had occasionally turned violent, requiring enhanced security for council gatherings. Any credible threats for today? Harry asked. Nothing specific, Draco replied. But chatter suggests they're planning something public soon. Not necessarily violence, more likely a political move. Harry nodded, unsurprised. The opposition had been shifting from direct confrontation to political maneuvering, attempting to undermine the Accord through legal challenges and propaganda. We'll remain vigilant, he said. But today is about celebrating progress, not dwelling on resistance. As the hour of the ceremony approached, Harry made his way to the council chamber, passing through the diverse crowd of magical beings who now cooperated with unprecedented harmony. Not perfect harmony, disagreements remained, ancient grudges occasionally surfaced, but functional cooperation based on mutual respect rather than enforced hierarchy. Inside the chamber, delegates had taken their places in a truly extraordinary assembly. Species that had once been enemies or strangers now sat as equals, preparing to govern cooperatively in matters affecting the broader magical ecosystem. When Harry was introduced, he took his place at the speaker's position, facing the assembled council. His wild speaker ability, now fully integrated into his magic, allowed him to perceive the unique energy of each species present, not just their words, but their emotions, intentions, and perspectives. 1 year ago, he began, his voice carrying easily through the chamber. A colony of magical serpents faced ministry capture for the crime of existing outside wizard control. That threatened capture sparked a movement that has transformed our world. He continued, recounting the journey from desperate coalition to formal governance structure. The Magical Beings Accord wasn't just a political document, it was recognition of a fundamental truth about magic itself, that it flows through all magical beings as a single, interconnected force. Looking around at the assembled delegates, Harry felt profound gratitude for how far they had come. This council represents an evolutionary leap in magical governance, from control to cooperation, from hierarchy to harmony, from division to unity while preserving diversity. As he spoke, Harry sensed the residual connection to the convergence strengthening, not manifesting fully as it had during the confrontation with Nightshade, but present as a subtle undercurrent, affirming the rightness of this new path. There will be challenges ahead, he acknowledged. Resistance from those who cling to old hierarchies. Disagreements between our diverse communities. Practical difficulties in implementing new approaches. But what we've created here is resilient because it aligns with magic's true nature. He concluded with a personal reflection, when I first discovered I could speak Parseltongue, it was considered a dark gift, something to fear and hide. Now I understand it was always meant to evolve into something greater, a capacity to bridge divides, to translate not just words but understandings between all who share in magic's gift. As Harry finished speaking, a spontaneous response rippled through the chamber, not applause, as would be typical in a wizarding gathering, but a diverse expression of approval from each species according to their customs. Centaurs stamped their hooves. Merepeople released harmonious tones through their water spheres. House elves snapped their fingers in unison, creating magical sparks. Together, these diverse acknowledgments created a symphonic effect that reflected the new harmony they were building. Firenze rose to officially open the council's first session, and Harry moved to join his friends at the observer section. As he did, Cesaroth approached, the great serpent having become the lead representative for the unified serpent colonies. "The circle completes itself, Potter Speaker," Cesaroth observed. "From our first meeting in the forest to this chamber of many voices. A circle that will continue expanding," Harry replied in Parseltongue. "The ICW has requested our guidance in implementing similar councils internationally." "The ripples spread outward," Cesaroth agreed. "As they must. Magic seeks balance naturally when artificial barriers are removed." Harry smiled at the serpent's wisdom. Throughout this journey, Cesaroth had offered perspectives that cut through human complexity to essential truths. "I never thanked you properly," Harry said. "That night in the Forest of Dean, if you hadn't trusted me, none of this would have happened." Cesaroth's head swayed in what Harry had come to recognize as the serpentine equivalent of dismissal. "You opened the door. All magical beings walked through together. The thanks belongs to all." As the formal council session began, Harry rejoined Ron and Hermione, watching as representatives from species that had been in conflict for centuries now engaged in respectful debate about shared challenges. "Strange to think it all started with you hearing snake voices again," Ron mused. "Bit worrying at the time, if I'm honest." "The wild speaker ability was always there," Hermione theorized, still fascinated by the magical implications. The Parseltongue was just its initial manifestation, limited by Harry's understanding and the circumstances of how he acquired it. "Or maybe magic itself was waiting for the right moment," Harry suggested. "When the need for communication across species became critical." They watched as the council proceeded through its agenda, establishing working procedures, forming specialized committees, addressing immediate concerns affecting multiple species. It wasn't perfect, occasional tensions flared, cultural misunderstandings arose, but the fundamental commitment to cooperation remained strong. As the session concluded for the day, Harry stepped outside the chamber into the forest clearing. The sun was setting, casting long shadows through the ancient trees. He extended his wild speaker senses, feeling the complex network of magical beings throughout the forest, each with their own lives, societies, and magic, yet all connected in the greater whole. The convergence had shown him, briefly but unforgettably, the ultimate expression of that connection, a unified magical consciousness where diversity strengthened rather than divided. While that complete unity couldn't be maintained constantly, its echo remained as a reminder of what was possible when artificial barriers fell away. Harry Potter had once again found himself at the center of magical history, not through prophecy or destiny this time, but through the simple act of listening when a colony of serpents needed help. From that small beginning had grown a movement that was transforming magical society itself. As twilight deepened over the Forbidden Forest, home to the new Magical Beings Council and symbol of the unified future they were building, Harry felt a deep contentment. The work wasn't finished, perhaps it never would be, but the path forward was clear, not control or division, but communication, understanding, and unity through diversity. The wild speaker would continue translating between worlds, bridging divides, and helping all magical beings find their unified voice. The end. Thank you for watching this video. Please be sure to subscribe to our channel and like this video.